Okay, Mayor has called the meeting to order. Our beloved clerk is at a conference, and I don't think I hear. So, Mr. Kaplan, are you here?
I am here.
Mr. London,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sardinius,
Here.
Mr. Moss,
Here.
Mr. Vasquez.
Here.
Okay. Miss McCormick is out of town. She's going to try to join us by Zoom.
Here.
All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I open for public comments, we want everybody in the village to be praying and about our one of our members, Luciano. I had the name right on the tip of my tongue. Mercenari. That family is going through a tremendous struggle. The paddle boarder has not been found. I just talked to the chief before coming on here, and the situation hasn't gotten any better. They have done the different search grids. We have helicopters in the air. We have 7 or 9 boats, I believe, that have gone after and looked at. There's been a slew of volunteers that have been out there on paddle boards looking, and so far no luck. So we need to continue to pray and hope that Luciano can be found.
Mayor, just also wanted to add congratulations to the Florida Panthers for winning their first Stanley Cup, which is a big thing. Never has been done, so history was made last night as well. So that was excellent.
Tremendous. Can you call out the name? Yes.
Good evening, council members, Manager Steve, Lawyer Chad. I'm here tonight asking you to defer the vote on the second reading of item 4A in the agenda. This ordinance grants a change in the zoning of the commercial district to allow for mixed use. By allowing residential and commercial areas, this ordinance permits an increase in density on our island. I feel the meeting tonight is ill-timed. This meeting for month has been advertised as only a budget workshop. Instead, the budget workshop is item number 6. The only notice I have seen about the ordinance was when the agenda was sent out this past Thursday. That is not enough notice for an ordinance of this importance and impact on our community. The Live Local Act is very complicated. Most residents do not understand it. A public workshop on the Live Local Act would be most helpful to our residents. This is summertime, and many residents have left town for cooler areas or are on vacation. It is an unfair time to vote on an ordinance of this importance. I promised I wouldn't say this, but I remember when the county used to do this and we all would be very upset. So let's hope we're not following their pattern. Even though the state has negated what is in our charter, I hope this council has not forgotten that the voters in the last election soundly defeated the request to have the council vote on zoning changes without a referendum. It certainly gave all of us a good opinion about how our residents feel about this. To encourage full government transparency, I urge you not to vote on item 4A, the ordinance tonight, but to postpone it until you all can have a wonderful public workshop on the Live Local Act, and our residents will have a full understanding of the impact of this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Yes.
Good evening, Michelle Esteves, 425 Grapetree Drive. I'm sorry I'm using this as a public announcement for our 4th of July parade.
No shame, all right.
Never, me? Never, Mayor. So we have the shirt, we have many left, we have the buttons to sell. Please support the parade. Going to this evening subject for the meeting. The zoning change, it is a law. There's not much that we can do. However, there are certain things that I believe that in the criteria I disagree with, and which in the criteria 4 reads that the proposed changes will enhance property values in the village. Yeah, I'm sure they will. But the analysis in the criteria 5 is a lot of contradiction and out of the reality, because the analysis read that will minimize for residents to leave the island for shopping and commercial use and activities. I mean, let's be honest. Right now, people that work on the island or whatever, they cannot afford. The people come here, they shop online, they shop in many different stores. Businesses are closing on the island. I have at the shopping center at the square a clothing store that is closing because they cannot continue you don't find $500-600 a month in rent, or the prices, they are not anymore $400,000 or $500,000 on the island. So that is a little contradiction. I think that this is too fast, too soon for the second reading. Between the first reading, with the knowledge that this is a law, should have been some public input in this, and look into it. What can we do in the change for the shopping centers? The 65% that are reading pays the minimum for the space to dedicate to residential purposes, the square footage, who is the people that is gonna live in there? And to close this for me, the comments, I'm sure I am not gonna be alive when I see this change, but I think that it have to be studied a little bit more than to pass the second reading this evening. I think you need some public input on this. My second comment is on the golf carts, to the the inter-agreement with the Dade County about our e-bikes and everything else. Please, I mentioned at the last time that the definition is not about only electric bikes. Please, on page 2 of the Exhibit A in your package, and the additional regulations, again, read Class A and Class 3 electric bikes, and then continue through the whole exhibit, talking about then change to Class 1 electric bike. So what is electric? What is Class 2? Class 3 electric bikes is referred to Class 1 electric bikes. I mean, which class is, and it's not only about electric bikes. It's about also scooters. It's about skateboards that they are also charged or whatever. So please don't concentrate only on electric bikes, because there are other devices. You can concentrate, or you can say it into all these agreements, electric bikes, but also include all electric devices, with the exception of the wheelchairs, wheelchairs that they are electric, because tomorrow can be another electric device. You don't know. So don't stick to just electric bikes. That is my comments that I brought again last time, and I bring it now, because then we find a loophole that then they come with everything else into our sidewalks. So thank you very much, and don't forget to support the parade, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Charles Collins, 1121 Crandon Boulevard. I'm here to speak on the, I don't know what you call it, poison pill amendment, the zoning rule. I listened to it. I've tried to dissect it. I've been in politics since college. I've negotiated union politics. I've negotiated city politics. I cannot figure this out. And if I can't figure it out, there's a lot of other people that can. You guys are going to need a lot of political capital coming up. You got a big ask on the budget. I suggest you don't waste it on this. Have a workshop, talk it over. It's not going anywhere. 67 counties have not figured this out. One has, Monroe. Let's follow the lead of somebody that's done it successfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, Myra Lindsay, 365 Westwood Drive. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I want to thank you for trying to protect our village from the threats of unfettered development posed by the Live Local Act. Based on the calls that I've received and the many conversations I've had, our residents are concerned and confused, understandably. With the stories in the news about massive towers in Wynwood this weekend and the Clevelander Hotel in South Miami, people are feeling nervous. Key Biscayne is potentially facing, and depending on who you speak to, I know I spoke to Ed and he disagrees, but I spoke to two zoning experts and says we are potentially facing an additional hundreds and hundreds of multifamily residential units. Our vulnerable sites include the entry block, gas stations, Harbor Plaza, the Square, Galleria, CVS site, the Winn-Dixie site, and the Esplanade. You and our administration have the task of analyzing and identifying how the Live Local Act can affect our community. This is complicated, and it has not been completed as evidenced by the memo that you're relying on for item 4A, which lacks detail and granularity. We need to understand the potential sites and how development calculations are made. We need to double down on critical details that make significant impacts such as downzoning, defining key terms such as mixed use, revising setbacks, height restrictions, Florida area ratio, and the lot aggregation rules. Your policy decisions will impact us for the next 2 decades, and they should not be rushed. Fortunately, our commercial district is now in zoning in progress status, and there is a moratorium on accepting and reviewing new building applications. I submit to you that there is a lot left to do, and your tweaks are laudable, but they're not enough. And I want to give a shout out to both Frank and Brett, who made some critical tweaks to the amendments, to the ordinances that you're considering. I think you guys can do more. I think you're on the right track, and thank you very much for those improvements. I think were critical. And I'm urging you to please defer agenda item 4A, the second reading, and again, take the time to identify additional details that strengthen the integrity of our critical and already limited commercial district, and also to educate our residents. The community is best served if you defer the second reading to October and hold an educational workshop on the impacts of the Live Local Act and how it affects us. I would say September, but you guys are pretty busy in September, so to be realistic and give it a realistic time frame. And listen, people are nervous. People don't understand. For whatever reason, someone woke up on Saturday and it just all connected, and I understand the chats are hot, and so out of respect for our residents and just deference and so the people are on the same page, please consider deferring this. It is important. It may not affect us that much, but the unknown is and uncertainty is very concerning. And having this type of second reading in the summer is highly unusual. It's something that we typically have waited until we have our residents back in town and not during a summer workshop. So out of consideration, I urge you to please defer this item, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Josie Valdez Hurtado, 600 Grape Tree Drive. Tonight was to be a budget meeting. It is now also a second hearing ordinance zoning change. Other speakers will address both topics covering details and data, as well as projections and recommendations. I wrote all of you an open letter for this week's issue of the Islander News. In it, I go over deep concerns as expressed out at the presentation of the Silver Sands project. The presenters assured the public that they are within the existing zoning codes and have no intention of changing the density. Yet, the approval of the project requires variances very much like the Oceania. This frankly borders on being offensive to the public and in reality more of the same. A rerun of the game of semantics that we had to endure when the Vision 2040 plan was approved by the council. Edited somehow to appease complaints, and us being told over and over that we did not understand words written in plain English. As expected, those concerns are now a reality. Unexpected, being addressed by you with tactics far from transparent and trustworthy. Open responses and subsequent actions from you and key personnel to raise concerns of conflict of interest would be the only solution to dispel the distrust that unfortunately you have created among concerned citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we close public comments. Let's do.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Shall I go ahead and
No.
read the ordinance on second reading?
Hold on a second. Let's, if you guys don't mind, you think we could do 5A, 5B, 5C, and then come back to 4A? Sure. So that we can dispatch with these if you guys aren't going to be too long on it, Ed. Mr. Attorney, can you read 5A for us?
Sure. 5A is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, accepting the 2024 Neat Streets Miami-Dade matching grant in an amount of $67,407 from the Miami-Dade County Parks, Recreation, Open Space Department for the Key Biscayne 2024 Street Tree Planting Program, providing for authorization, providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion on the item?
I do. Just
Yes.
Really quick. So the trees are 14 feet in height is what we're looking at.
Yes, 14 feet based on the code.
And what's the DBH usually?
2.5. The minimum the county requires is 2.
They're like little tiny trees,
Little
right?
tiny trees, yeah.
And that's what we have to do, or can we
We could
upgrade
do
it?
more. Now, if we do more, a larger...
It's going to cost more.
Exactly. We
So
can
you'd have
reduce-
less trees if we put larger ones.
Which we could be done as well.
I mean, just so you know, these are very young trees, 14 feet, 2.5 inches. I mean, these are tiny little sticks, right? Are we okay with that? It's going to take a long time for them to grow in, or like we said, we have a certain amount of money. We could do less trees, larger trees. Is that something that we could decide later, or that's something we have to decide now on here? Just
voting on getting the money, are we?
The earlier, the better, because it would require an amendment. So if we
you would
are-
have to amend the grant in order to do that.
Right.
Yeah, the
Which
grant
is-
actually says what type of trees
What
and
type of
what
tree?
size of trees and how many it says.
And who decides this part of the grant? The 14 feet, 2.5 inch. Was that us? Is that them?
The
Is that
14
just...
feet was posed by us just to kind of maintain the consistency with the code.
Okay.
But the county only requires 10 feet and 2 inches of,
Yeah, it's super
of
small.
DBH, yeah, very small.
Okay. I mean, I guess like I'm okay with moving forward. It's just we need to know that these are really young trees.
I don't understand who decided the size
the type of tree?
We did because it meets our minimum code. So our minimum code is the 2 inches for 14 feet is the minimum code. So we went with the minimum
You
code.
could decide what you want.
A lot of these,
We can increase it, but we would have to
We'd have fewer trees.
amend the grant.
Okay, so in the future, what you're really saying is present to someone on the council, you or someone else, to look at before we submit it for a
Yeah.
grant.
most of the trees right now, about 60 and some change, are in for Village Green Park. So
They're mostly in the Village Green
mostly in
Park.
Village Green Park. 30 to 40 of them are for replacements for this recent storm that we had. But if the wish is to have, higher quality or larger trees, that can be done. Just, we can redo the numbers. We'd have to go back to the drawing board, maybe reduce some trees in the park.
Can we accept the grant and that can
But
still?
we can accept the grant
you
and then
can
change.
adjust that. Still.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that
good.
can be done.
I think it's good because I think I'm more worried about the street trees.
Okay.
On that side.
Yeah.
Accept the money.
We still have discretion to choose where to put which trees.
Take the money where they're ready.
Ideally, they are good with
Live
anything
oak.
Florida friendly, no prohibited trees, of course, and
But
they're
for
against.
example, we could intersperse these trees in areas that are a little bit bare
Yes.
and not rely on these as for streetscape.
Right, and the idea is they prefer that we're filling in gaps and trying to fill in these open areas that need canopy. So if we choose, the areas that you choose for that it's a pro. It's
Let's
positive for them.
gratefully, let's take the money and spend it wisely.
Yep.
Okay.
I have a
Question?
Yeah, it's actually more, and this is great, and I appreciate it. Everybody's moving forward with this, but when we engage more into the right-of-way construction, looking forward in the future, is staff looking to these grants as well? And this goes kind of segues into the budget and trying to offset some costs for construction, anticipating that, we have an opportunity to replant or put additional trees when we do the stormwater project, and are we looking at those grants for the future as well? There's an opportunity to start positioning for some of those grants
Right, ideally that's the
for
plan.
2025. Yeah.
Right, that would be the plan.
Yeah, we will. And as you've noticed, I think over the last 3 years, we've become even more aggressive with need streets. Each year, we've done more.
It's great.
There's probably other granting agencies we could look into, Olga. I'm sure we could look at that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
this
let's
is one
take
that's pretty
advantage of
successful.
it. Yeah.
And I think the more successful we are, the county's more willing to give us more trees. So
Correct.
that's it. So
That's right.
yes, we'll definitely look into that.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, then we're okay with the trees, but they're going to come back and tell us what options we have for the street trees, right? I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that's what we're asking. Okay.
Now, question.
Yeah.
Would you want to have that presented at the next meeting with the proposed number of trees, or would you like to meet individually? How would we do this? Because just timing wise, I mean,
We shouldn't wait till the next meeting.
We're going to come with the purchase of the trees in August 27th because we have to move relatively quickly on this. Why don't I do this?
Okay.
Olga and I will sit down. We'll talk about the numbers, size, locations, and then I'll send them out to each one of you, and you can give me some feedback on it.
Excellent.
As many trees as we can.
And we still have discretion on type, as long as they're Florida friendly,
Right.
Florida native.
And we try to match them, but particularly when it's on a certain road, to match them with the tree on the road if there is a certain
the
tree
street
that's
tree
prevalent.
inventory. Mhm.
As you, just remember though, the discussion about, for example, heather and the prevailing street tree on heather and whether that's really a sensible solution forever and for all time.
Yeah, that's probably going to take more than a Neat Streets investment because that's a significant number of trees. This one is, what's the total, Olga, on this
This
one?
is a total of 149, which by the way needs to be reduced because the quotes that we received were much higher than what we originally
It's going to get us down to
anticipated.
about 100, right?
Right, so we're looking at maybe 100 to 110 trees, give or
60
take.
of them are in the Village Green,
Yeah,
more or less.
most of them in the Village Green.
Majority.
Okay, any further discussion on item 5A? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
let's go to 5B. Mr. Attorney, would you help us out here?
A resolution of the Village Council, the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting Albright Engineering, Inc. for professional engineering services for the Garden District and Drainage Improvements Project pursuant to request for qualifications number 2023-21 in an amount not to exceed $358,149.22, providing for authorization, providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion, questions?
What are they gonna do? I never got a book.
It's 5B in tab 3. Colleen, Go ahead. You want to just give a brief explanation?
Sure. We applied for this HMGP grant to do this project a little over 2 years now. It's active, and this is for phase one. So the phase one will complete the full design with oversight from FDEM. And we selected Albright. They were the most responsive, and I think, most responsible and most responsive bidder. They understood the project. They came in within budget. It's a 90-10 split with the grant.
Okay.
When we had the ACOM do the analysis of the storm source, didn't they do the analysis of this area also?
It's in the village-wide drainage assessment. What we're planning on doing from a resilience program standpoint is utilizing the grant funding now to mitigate an immediate problem. This zone, this area of the village, will be programmed out into later years for a full upgrade that will tie into the full resilience stormwater system upgrade that will discharge out into the bay. But for now, this is going to be an excellent fix for quite a while.
So there's an
I guess
immediate.
my question again is, they're talking about deficiency, address deficiency, blah, blah, blah. Is this based on ACOM? What's it based on?
It's based on the 2015 Stormwater Master Plan, which is what we had used to apply for the grant for in, I think, 2020. So what we've been doing as a resilience program team, since this was applied for before any of us were doing the resilience program to the extent we're doing it now, is we're trying to make the most of what we have, make sure that we're alleviating the flooding problem and the drainage issue, especially around the beach club, and utilizing a really favorable grant match to do so for the time being. This is going to be constructed a lot sooner than if we were to wait until we get to it with the stormwater upgrades in the resilience program.
I guess my question is very simple. Are we doing anything duplicate? Is anything being duplicated?
No.
So in other words, they're not going to do anything in engineering and design that ACOM wouldn't have done already.
AECOM will do a separate engineering design potentially a decade later. Like, we're going to be constructing this within the next couple years. We have to use all the money fairly quickly. You're going to see a full done improvement very quickly. So AECOM's work on this zone, this area, won't commence for a very long time. They will design a system that will connect to Crandon, which is not the same system that is going to be put in place with this grant.
So has ACOM assessed what's necessary in this area or not yet?
Yes, because they needed to do a full village-wide drainage assessment to understand the lay of the land for the entire village, including this area. Their plan is to do a connected, integrated system, including this area, into the rest of the system with pumps, and it's a lot more intensive, a lot more expensive. This is something that's going to be a fix for the time being, and the time being could be 20 years. It's going to be infrastructure that can last a full infrastructure's lifetime, but the AECOM work isn't going to come in until much later.
My question is, they don't have to assess anything because ACOM has done that already, is that correct?
AECOM has not designed this system.
I didn't say design it, they assessed what's required to design the system. First, you have to know what's required. You have a problem, and then you design the system. So the ACOM has decided there's a problem, they've assessed the area, right?
Yes, they've assessed the
So my
area.
question is, these people are not going to do that. They're just going to
No.
now, based on ACOM, design a system to take care of it? Or are they going to
No.
start assessing?
No, AECOM has assessed the system to the extent that they know what the discharge deficit is in the area. They've done their analysis. But this particular system is based off of a 2015 Stormwater Master Plan. What AECOM's doing is updating that plan. So while this isn't going to necessarily mirror exactly what AECOM would design when they might design it later, it's still going to be a fix for this area for quite a while.
I understand that. I just want to pay double for something.
This is a Band-Aid,
I
Ed.
know, I understand that. My question is,
Well-
are they including something in their contract they already have? So why do we have to pay double for it? And if they're not, that's great. That's all.
We haven't
That's my
contracted,
question.
yeah, we haven't
And what has
contracted
happened
AECOM yet.
between the 2015 and now? Has anything drastically changed? Any new
Sea level
buildings?
rise.
Yes.
Any new changes or anything else happen on that particular street? That's what I'm asking.
Well, this design will take and consider any changes in sea level rise, so we can
Right.
ensure that. And one thing, and I don't know whether she said this, is actually money coming out of Hurricane Irma, and it's actually Irma. Am I
No,
correct?
it's COVID.
COVID. So it's actually a 90-10 split. So they're going to pay 90% of this project.
I love 90%, I love
It's-
100.
But let me follow. So what we're going to do is this will actually push back quite extensively the requirement for us to do the infrastructure program in the garden district. Here to us.
Okay.
So and we'll take that in consideration. It'll be the last zone we will do
Right.
because of this initial construction right now.
I think this is a kind of a segueing type of approach for the designs that we have to conduct right now and try to provide some mitigation for flooding while we go ahead and we model something in a way more sophisticated. I mentioned sea level rise because I know the 2015 plan did not really take that into account.
Correct.
And that's because it wasn't really in the mindset of the public at that point, really, or was growing just at the inception of it. And now that we've become more aware of it, we are growing in a larger model, and we're looking at all these components, all these impacts. I think that there is an opportunity to coordinate with a model that is being done right now,
Right.
and try to do it in a way that it's not necessarily, I mean, a Band-Aid, yes, it's a temporary solution. I see it as a temporary solution with an opportunity to coordinate for a later, better improvement, kind of like the Lego approach.
Correct.
Let's do something now that later on, that we don't really have to do away with in the future, that we can just put it with the current, with the future system.
Yeah, it's,
right?
yeah, it's much more than a
Let's
Band-Aid.
design
This is
intelligently.
quite an extensive
Right.
design.
Yeah.
It'll definitely result in very good stormwater system.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll ask them to coordinate with AECom and understand what the assessment they've done.
We're applying the proper logic on that.
Yeah,
We have coordinated with AECom in the preparation of getting this bid together and reviewing the design from 2 years ago. So there's been some modifications from that old design to what we actually want to do now. So we've been working on trying to make it less redundant.
I guess my point is, if I may, is that, you know, we're not going to know everything until we fully execute all these projects, until these projects, I mean, we're talking about something that's going to happen through time, but we're going to have needs to address sporadic or specific discrete flooding throughout the village. So I like the way this is being considered. I like the way it's being thought out. We have to do an improvement now, but we're going to consider what is being done, and we're going to coordinate with AECom, whoever's doing the model, whoever may do the model in the future. So we don't necessarily waste money. We do it the right way, and then we combine the systems.
Correct.
I think that that's the right approach.
Mr. Sardinhas.
I think that answers my question. I just wanted to make sure that AECom understands what we're doing now
Yes,
in any
we've
future
sat down.
assessments for designs. Yeah.
Yeah, we've sat down with
We're
them.
good.
Yeah.
Quick question, Colleen. I thought it was interesting that Albright has the least amount of experience in years, but they ranked #1 all the way down. What is it about them that you guys like? I guess they great presentation, or
It's been a little while.
I just want to see if they're doing something. They approach it differently than most of the other guys.
I can't honestly. I can't
Okay.
remember off the top of my head. But if
But you guys feel confident that these guys with 12 years of experience
Yes.
are the right guys
Come in
against
there
people
that
with
may-
7
There we
years
go.
of
yes,
experience,
if
right?
they're-
If I may, I'm the president of Albright. If I may.
I was going to ask.
You need to be
Darren.
called by staff, sir.
Hold on.
That's it.
Do you need the
No.
gentleman to come forward?
No, I mean, I just wanted to know if there was something.
I mean, yeah, I remember it was unanimous.
That's all.
So there was some. There's definitely some. I should have reviewed what we had scored.
Okay.
But yeah.
No, it just stuck out that they were top ranked by far of everybody else, and I see, you know,
I think
it's,
their
it's
project-
something about them you guys really liked. I was just
My
wondering.
my recollection is that the project approach was very, very strong, and that one
Okay.
has some of the highest point rankings.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Would you like to bring up the
Yeah, we can
the
we can
representative
have
from
them
Albright
talk
to just
about
have
it
a
if you
quick
want.
conversation about how they're going to support the village?
It's nice they came.
If you would, sir.
Uh,
Yes, no, Mayor?
yes, 10 seconds. Come on. We got
the elevator speech.
I'll make it. I'll make it quick. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I want to answer. Our company has 12 years of experience, but the engineers do not have 12 years of experience. I personally have 25 years of experience. I happen to be the engineer of record for the I-395 Signature Bridge that's happening now. I'm the engineer of record for all of that drainage. And my team that's at Albright also worked on that project. So we've got engineers, they're local. The firm is just 12 years old. But we've
That's
got
a
lot
good
of old
elevator
guys.
speech. You're the engineer for that bridge?
I'm sorry?
You're the engineer for that project? For the
Yes, sir.
drainage of
I'm the
that-
drainage engineer of record.
That's a good elevator speech. So
Stormwater.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the, the resolution is before us. Seeing no other conversation on this, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 5C, Mr. Attorney.
Resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving an interlocal agreement with Miami-Dade County to enforce Section 2-98.3 of the Miami-Dade County Code of Ordinances and additional regulations relating to the operation of micromobility devices, electric bicycles, and motorized scooters, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Been moved and second. The item's properly before us. Mr. Attorney or Mr. Manager, you want to give us what we're doing here?
Sure. So this resolution before you, which is approving an interlocal agreement, is following up on the county code provision 2-98.3, which was adopted recently by the county commission, which allows for the village, it's specific to Crandon Boulevard, and it allows the village to enforce the county's regulations on micromobility devices on Crandon Boulevard. So it is broader than electric bicycles. It affects electric scooters and electric bicycles. The county ordinance will require that these devices be located in the bike lanes and not on the sidewalks on Crandon. What we are doing here, what's proposed in this agreement, is that underneath the county ordinance, the village is permitted, with the county's consent through this agreement, to adopt additional regulations that go beyond the scope of the county code provision. What is being proposed in here is that class 1 bicycles would be permitted, but class 2 and 3 would not be permitted until such time that there's a legislative change, or alternatively, the Attorney General says that such devices that the council or the county could adopt a minimum age limit. So,
And scooters are not permitted?
Scooters are permitted only in the bike lanes underneath the county code.
And class 1 is only in the bike lane also?
So all devices are in the bike lane only.
But class 2 and 3 are prohibited now.
So currently under the county code provision, class 2 and class 3 are permitted. However, it allows us by agreement with the county to propose to prohibit them, and that's what this agreement is proposing to do, to propose class 2 and class 3. This was after a discussion with Commissioner Regalado. The mayor met with her, Steve and myself met with her staff and with her, and in talking with her staff and with Steve, the proposal was to propose, because it still has to go to the county commission, that class 2 and class 3 would be prohibited until such time that there's legislative change or the Attorney General says it's okay for us to adopt minimum age limits on Crandon.
And that's Crandon only in
This is
the municipality.
only
in the
Only
Crandon
Crandon.
Park does not.
This does not affect Crandon Park. This is only within our municipal boundaries.
And just for edification, where does that end?
Well, clearly on the south side, it's Bill Baggs, the entrance.
Yeah.
On the north side, just I would say approximately right past the entrance sign, around that area.
Okay. That's what I thought.
You know.
We adopted our ordinance last time, and it covers micromobility devices generally.
Yeah.
This is only about approving the interlocal agreement, which gives us that authority that we were lacking to do what our ordinance does, with one exception. It's the class 1 bikes in the bike lane, and that's the county's condition for doing anything at all.
Exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
the effect of this interlocal agreement.
Yes, and the effect of it is it allows us to enforce the county code provision that these devices, all devices that are permitted, can only be in the bike lane.
Yeah, and we need to be very clear that this is only Crandon.
only
Our
Crandon.
ban is still in full
And
effect on
includes
every other road.
And
that's
includes
public.
all those other devices.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
One thought question on the way this is presented. Is the effect, if all of a sudden we were able to regulate age, is the effect of that sudden development to negate the ordinance that prohibits class 2 and 3 because that condition was satisfied as a result of this?
No, because as in the agreement, it says that I'll read it so it's clear, but it says that the village would have to adopt the actual age limits. So,
but it's not just age. It's conceivable to me that we would do that for sure. But it's also conceivable to me that we would want to regulate the method of operation for those class 2 and class 3 devices.
Well, again, that would be just on Crandon we're talking here, first of all.
I understand it's just on Crandon.
And the operation in the effect, so...
Are we self-limiting too much just to deal with age when there are other potential conditions of operation that we might want to speak to if we had the opportunity to because of clarity in the state law? That's the point.
We could add a more catch-all if you'd like.
I think it would be more comfortable for me because we might want to speak to other issues. You know, we have
You're
multiple.
talking about the ordinance we've already passed.
No,
I'm talking about the effect on class 2 and class 3 in our ordinance being diluted or eliminated because of the effect of the condition on age alone later being satisfied.
I think also what you're saying is if the state law changes, for example, and it does more than age and does other regulations that we then can further regulate, that you want to be able to address that also.
Yeah, I mean,
right, but right now we're only dealing with what it says in the interlocal.
But I'm suggesting that we expand what it would take, what our allowance would be to regulate, not just on the basis of age, but anything else that we think is appropriate to regulate.
If I may, Chad, if I would. So let's remember, though, so if we are successful in getting the state to put into the state law that we can regulate by age, and let's just assume they state you can regulate by 16, we, as a village, can adopt that if we choose to do that. But that we don't know whether the county is going to adopt that, right? Because remember, what we're writing is an IOA in order to enforce the county's law in a very specific way. So that would also, what happens on Crandon Boulevard would be contingent on what the county chooses. Obviously, we would push them to ask them to do something similar, but again, that would be a separate effort than we being able to make a regulation by age on our own streets.
I get that, but all I'm really trying to raise here is, are we too self-limiting by making this condition only age applicable and not other regulatory ideas that we may want to adopt later if we have the opportunity to do so?
I don't think this limits us.
No.
Well, the way that the additional regulations section is written is that the class 2 and class 3 are prohibited until the legislature has expressly authorized the county or the village to establish minimum age limits for the operation of such bikes, or the Attorney General has opined that such authority already exists and the county or village adopts an ordinance establishing such minimum age limits. So it is, the additional authority in this interlocal is limited to if, like, say, for example, if the legislature were to adopt additional operational requirements, as Councilmember Kaplan was saying, could be an option, that wouldn't change the prohibition on Crandon. The only thing that would change is if they adopted the minimum age limit and we then adopted or the county adopted it effectively.
Let me put it a different way to try to get at this and end this discussion. If all of a sudden we could regulate age on the basis of age, are class 2 and class 3 bikes, e-bikes, permissible on Crandon, full stop, without restriction, that we could impose at that time? We have multiple curb cuts. There's lots of pedestrian conflict points. They go very fast.
No, well, so if the legislature were, let's assume that the legislature allows local governments to adopt minimum age limits. Under this, that the law itself would not change this agreement. There would then have to be, the ordinance would have to be adopted to establish the minimum age limits. That's what this says. So there would be an extra step. It wouldn't be an automatic.
And the open question under the state law is whether we would have authority to regulate in any respect, other than speed limit. Speed limit is speed limit.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have speed limit. I mean, there are other things, I guess, that could be put into the legislation that would allow the local governments to regulate. For example, let's say that it did age, and you have to have a driver's license.
Well, this is the kind of discretion I don't want to, by dint of too much specificity and limit in the language, deprive ourselves of later.
Well,
I don't see how that is the case.
Because we're only conditioning this on age. And, if
And
age
we're
is
only
solved-
conditioning this on Crandon Boulevard. That's it. Our thing continues to be exactly the same.
All we're talking about is Crandon Boulevard.
Yeah, that's all.
I get that. Crandon Boulevard's the worst problem.
But right now,
I have a
Class
question.
2 and Class 3 can go down Crandon Boulevard.
Right.
We can't regulate it. But this is letting us.
I understand
be-
the value of this.
And yet the kids can still ride their bikes to Mass.
We want to do this.
Well, fine, then
Right.
let's pass the thing
It's
and
this
go on.
condition being so limited that I'm raising.
Well, we could always change this, yeah.
Allison?
Yeah, I had a question. Frank, I thought I understood what you were saying, and now I feel I don't. Is your concern that we're going to want to limit more? Like that even if we could limit by age, we still may not want Class 2 and 3 on Crandon?
Conceivably, yes.
I mean, I think, at least my position, I wish that we could regulate them because I think that there are adults and responsible drivers, even at the age of 17, 16, with a license and with education, who should be able to use them appropriately, all of them. But unfortunately, we're filled with a village of really small children on like motorcycles. So I don't think that I have a problem with opening it up if we can regulate by age.
If we added the simple expedient of having a driver's license, how do you feel about that?
I love that, but I think that what we've heard is that that's not likely to fly in Tallahassee, that we have a better chance at just age.
But we're not talking about Tallahassee now. We're just trying to get permission to do this from the county. And we're trying to build in conditions that work for us.
License as in addition to age, not say we require a driver's license.
If we were to have the ability, because of a change in the state law, to regulate on the basis of age, why not include a driver's license?
Because we don't regulate driver's licenses.
No,
And
the
state
operator
does,
of
and
the
they can
motorcycle
operate anywhere.
Yes.
Driver's license.
To operate a motorcycle in our community, you need a driver's license. That's the effect.
Council member, if I could. So I think there's unfortunately we're going to have to go through many steps like to get to where we want to go, and we're doing it step by step by step. And this is an interim step to get where we need to be in order to regulate on Crandon. What we are going to do going forward for next year's state session is two things. One, we're going to ask to regulate by age, which is what you're mentioning. Secondly, what we want to do is take electronic bicycles out from underneath the bicycle statute and create a separate classification. Unfortunately, right now, not only can you not regulate by age, they are also under the same category, same regulations of bicycles, which bicycles are not allowed to be regulated to have a license. So we can't do that according to state law. So there's two steps we have to do at the state in order to get what you're suggesting might be a solution.
I'm not even talking about the state. Let me try one last time. If this clause, this fourth whereas, said that the prohibition would end if we can regulate by age and require a driver's license, how would that work?
Well, one, we don't know how the county will react, just because we have
This
not
has been
flushed that
negotiated
language
already.
with the county. I mean, look, in my world, I'm okay. I can draft that. That's easy enough. I think that would be my only concern is I don't know.
I think we should do this regardless. If the county would accept that, I think it's stronger. And if they don't accept it, we need to do this anyway.
Yeah, I agree with Frank. I think we should just put it in and negotiate it, and if they have a problem with it, but start somewhere and work our
Give
way
the
down.
manager that
We did
authority.
already negotiate.
And they said no to the driver's license?
Then we live with this, because we need to do
We
this.
can always take it out.
Calls the question.
Can we just give it to the manager to try to negotiate it? If they don't, we'll just keep it the way it is, but put it in. If we
There
can
is
get
a
it in there.
condition or well, not a condition?
No, it's just that
As an
it
added?
disappears if.
It disappears if
Well,
he cannot.
the item,
We get
the
those
item
two
already provides that it's being adopted in substantially the form attached, okay? If you wanna give the manager direction to see if we can have the county agree to this extra provision, that's fine, we can go back, and if they agree, they agree, if not, you know, I mean, actually, we would probably go to Commissioner Regalado first, and then, and
we go to
see,
Public Works after
and then
that.
go to Public Works and the mayor's office, and then, you know, see what the temperature.
Let's take what we've got, okay? We can always try to improve it, but let's take what we've got.
Yeah, I'd rather not delay it, but if they can put it
I don't
in,
want to delay it at all.
Yeah.
I want to, but
Yeah.
if you could get it, get it.
Yeah, ask for it. See what they say. If they say no, just move on.
Mr. Mayor, I'll reach out tomorrow. Well, if we pass this tonight with the requirement for me to go ahead and renegotiate or try to negotiate, not renegotiate, it's not a good word.
Right.
And I will tell you that we've brought up that before. It really hasn't been favorable, but what I'll do is I'll push it. But as Chad mentioned, we will have to do it initially with Commissioner Regalado's office, Public Works, and then follow up with the mayor's. And I can try to give you feedback by the end of the week on this,
But the bottom line is, this is going to go forward unless you can improve it.
Yeah.
Yes.
if that's okay. Yes.
Right, okay.
Can
Thank
I
you.
ask one last question?
Yes.
What does the police department feel about enforcing this with the distinction of classes of bikes? And is the feeling just that it's gonna be easy to enforce, stay off the sidewalk and into the street? I'm a little worried about unintended consequences, specifically with people commuting to Mast.
Yeah, okay. Allison, I'm sure he's gonna tell you that he's gonna love to enforce this, right?
But is it gonna be, I mean, is it realistic?
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. And Councilman, to answer your question, listen, we expressed our concerns with the Class 1 and motorized scooters. I do think it's going to be a learning curve like anything else, but I feel confident that we're going to be able to enforce the provisions of the interlocal agreement. The fact is they have to remain in the bike lane. If they're not in the bike lane, they're in violation. So it's just going to take some education and messaging to the community and understanding it. And it doesn't change anything within the jurisdictional limits of Key Biscayne, because this is just for Crandon. Everything within our interior streets is still a ban.
Okay.
Okay, Allison?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if I do want to make it clear, both to the council as well as the public, that if or when this does pass the BCC, obviously that has to go 2 readings through them. Also, we have 60 days of education after that's passed, and then also we need to put up signs to notify anyone who's driving as well. So there is another step-by-step process to put that is into effect as well.
Okay, on item 5C is before us. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Chad, can you read 4A? Let's.
Give me one. Okay. An ordinance of the Village, Key Biscayne, Florida, amending Chapter 30 zoning and land development regulations of the Village Code of Ordinances by amending Section 30-101 commercial districts to create minimum square footage standards for mixed-use developments, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Move to defer.
Could you explain why
Can
we're
we
doing
can we
this?
speak? Can we speak about it if we have a move to defer?
I want to get it on the table.
Can we explain to us what you had before and to the audience why we're doing this?
Hold on a second. The move to defer was not seconded, so we have the item before us, and we'll have this discussion now.
Yeah, I agree. Just a better discussion.
It hasn't been moved.
No.
Yeah.
I moved to defer.
Oh, I moved the other thing.
Well, a motion to defer takes precedence unless it fails.
But
so-
it didn't have a second.
Okay, there's no second.
Okay.
We can
So-
still have discussion though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
the item is properly before us now.
I'm sorry, who first and seconded the motion?
It hasn't been seconded.
I'll second it.
Okay.
No, not to defer,
Right.
to have the ordinance.
That is what happened.
Right. Okay, so, I mean, we can still have discussion and then, move in second, however you guys want to act. So what this ordinance is doing, it was intended to be a protection measure against the Live Local Act. Underneath the Live Local Act, this community, because the community has less than 20% of its land zone industrial commercial, the Live Local Act says that if someone's going to avail themselves of those provisions, the development would have to be mixed use. So we are defaulted into any development utilizing the Live Local Act in the village would be a mixed use development. Where can that go? The commercial property on Crandon. I believe the administration has also said it in the HR district, were really the two districts. What this was meant to do was trying to, again, protect against another provision in the bill, which says that when you have a mixed use development, at least 65% of the development would have to be residential. And it's worded a little bit oddly because it says at least 65% would have to be residential. So what that means is that somebody could do 75% residential, 80% residential. Well, the administration was trying to protect the commercial base of the village by saying, well, we understand the law says at least 65% residential square footage has, however, that means that 35% has to be non-residential, so we can protect our commercial corridor. That was the intent of this. It was really a protection measure. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
But economically, what this does kills the possibility of building Live Local in the commercial district.
Well, I can't
Because by
speak
doing
to
this,
that.
what happens is, since it's total square footage, no one needs any more commercial. Our commercial, we have actually more commercial we need. It's evidenced by having offices. We're retail. Retail is usually a higher use than offices. So that's the first indication without even doing any surveys. Now, if you took an area that's, we'll say 4 acres or 3, take 4 acres. All of a sudden now, 35% of whatever that total square footage, and correct me if I'm wrong, would now have to be commercial. So if you want to build 3 acres of residential, you have to build an acre of commercial. So it makes it really kills the area to build, and so it's strictly it's one more way of killing the Live Local Act, and that's how I look at it. And that's how I personally analyze the economics.
And I completely agree with that. And this is one portion of a larger array that didn't come forward tonight that also follow what I think we have discovered are basically consistent with the best practices practiced around the state and cities and counties. If there's anything that we're missing in this ordinance, I personally am not aware of it other than the few ideas that we discussed on the residential side the last time we met, which are still being baked in, thought about.
Right, and that ordinance will be is scheduled for second reading in August. Remember, there were 2 ordinances. There was the mixed use one before you tonight, and there was the minimum housing standards one. That minimum housing standards ordinance will come at second reading in August.
So to call this upzoning is completely wrong.
Yeah, not an upzoning, no.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because some of the stuff that was said at the podium, that if you read the section of the commercial zoning, this is not, what does it say? It's not, we're not allowing mixed use in any way of what we're making this change. We're actually trying to do the opposite. We're trying to ensure that mixed use does not come. We are not permitting increase in density in any way. And this actually change in the code will have very little impact on us and a big impact of what may not come. So that's the most important. It's almost a no-brainer to be doing this change. If you look at the code, the main permitted use, conditional use, accessory use, and the prohibited uses are spelled out as commercial, 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 and anything prohibited is anything else that's not commercial. The problem is we have to put a small piece in the code, very, very short, if otherwise permissible to be developed as mixed use, meaning the Live Local Act that we cannot control, that comes from the state, then you would have to put 35% of that square footage and it must be dedicated to commercial use. What a person can do today is build 95% of the building as a multifamily and put one little store in it and they comply, killing all of our commercial district, which would be horrible for the characteristics here. So what Ed London was saying is completely correct. What people also need to know is that a lot of developers who do multifamily that are interested in this don't like mixed use. They want to look for multifamily because it's cheaper, it's easier, it's simpler. This adds another hurdle. It starts taking away more developers out of the possibilities of coming here. So it's a very good thing that we're making this change. And I just want to make sure that people understand that what was said is completely incorrect. This is actually the opposite. We're trying to avoid and deter people from coming here and doing mixed use or multifamily in our commercial zones.
So just for my edification and more to understand, is there an opportunity, I guess if I'm a developer and you say that I can only, I have to, if I'm going to develop with that using this local, I would have to do a 35% increase in commercial. Now, and I'm kind of thinking, is there an opportunity through that 35% to subsidize the component that they can't develop for residential?
So the problem that they're going to end up having is parking.
Because they can't develop
like
a certain component of residential, they could use the commercial component to subsidize the part that they can't develop for residential.
There's no market for it.
No.
Well, you say there's no market. I don't have a market survey, so I don't know.
New demographics.
Well, I understand, but I'm saying I can't sit here and say specifically with any certainty, any scientific certainty that there is no market for it.
Yeah.
But I can certainly say that properties are pretty valuable and commercial properties are valuable. And I'm wondering if there is something there that could be used as a subsidy for what I cannot develop for residential.
Yeah, so I mean, most likely a subsidy for that would just be larger units versus smaller units.
Okay.
Is probably what they'll do. On top of it, a commercial would add more complexity to parking and other requirements that they would have to put in. It's something that's not as attractive.
An deterrence, probably.
I think so. I mean, would it deter 100%? I can't say that, but it will definitely add more difficulty, complexities to come here.
It's almost always the reverse, but it's not always the reverse. It's the residential that
usually subsidizes
adds
the
value
commercial
to the commercial, not vice versa.
Yeah.
But there are examples, even in Miami, where multifamily is developed around the Aldi shopping, that little retail thing, and where Commissioner Regalato's office is located.
But this is not that.
But this isn't that. It's not even in the neighborhood of that. It's the opposite of what you're wrestling with.
And regardless, I think what's important is you're preserving your commercial core to the best you can.
Yes.
Because without this, as Councilmember Moss says, you could go to 90% or 95%, and this will help to preserve it.
One of the questions I did have on here, can we put in prohibited uses, mixed use, and multifamily? Because obviously if they're coming with a Live Local, they're going to override that anyways, but just to be clear in the code that we're still prohibiting this, it's just that
we can't do that tonight.
But in August, or whatever we're bringing back.
I mean, you could put in mixed use is prohibited, and then I'm gonna except for Live Local, maybe, because we're preempted.
Here's a question: if we try to define mixed use, meaning the commercial or retail or office side of mixed use, as being compatible with the historic and necessary uses that have enlivened our commercial sector forever, could that work? As opposed to just anything that's not residential.
Or could we just put prohibited use multifamily? Is that a possibility? Just so that.
Well, it is. I mean, our code currently says if it's not listed if it's not permitted, then it's prohibited. So by default, it is already prohibited in the commercial multifamily. The only thing that would allow it would be the Live Local.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying it just looks weird under district. It says if otherwise permissible. It just when you read it, I can see why somebody.
I mean, you could say if otherwise permissible by state law. You could say that.
Or about other law or whatever.
If you want to clarify.
But we're getting to a point now of trying to clarify what uses would be suitable mixed uses. For example, if the Scientology storefront on Dixie Highway was the mixed use, That wouldn't be very useful for Key Biscayne, would it?
I just wanted to clarify that we don't want any mixed use, that's it, in there. But if it's already clear, it's fine, but just want to make sure there's no misinterpretation later on down the road.
I mean, remember the purpose here. This law, in my view, I think we have consensus on this, and this is shared around the state. This is just a fig leaf to thwart local control, to catalyze unbridled development, a giveaway to developers, and we're trying to do the best we can to deal with this incipient threat.
So all I would suggest is that look at this by August, and if we need to clear it up, we'll do it then, but just make sure it's crystal clear.
This is so obvious what we're trying to do
Yeah.
to eliminate live local.
It is a no-brainer, but if we're going, we got some wrestling to do yet with the residential side. If you want to, the thought process of working on that might actually help on this one as well. So I don't have any problem. There's no driving need to do this tonight because of the zoning in progress and because we got through first reading, I think. If you feel like we're exposed to somebody coming along and wanting to take over the Esplanade tomorrow, I think that'd be a serious consideration.
No, we have the zoning in progress is in place. It's not a moratorium. However, if somebody would want to come in and do a live local project tomorrow, they would have to meet this 35% standard.
So, and including the residential components that we adopted at first reading.
That's correct.
So, that to me helps a lot. Well, we still need to do this, but if we want to take a little time and let the community absorb this, this entire reaction is completely wrong. But
Well, people have been spreading misinformation,
yes, I think that's true.
so that's what's been happening.
I think that's true, and that happens sometimes, and it creates headwinds that are avoidable. So, I started with the idea of deferring with that in mind.
All right, let's do one thing. We open the public hearing on this on second reading. So if someone wants to come forward, this is the right time.
Good evening again, Myra Lindsay, 365 Westwood Drive. Again, I want to reiterate that I appreciate what you all are doing and you are tweaking things to protect our community. I do suggest, though, that it would be useful because there is lack of understanding if you would be good enough to defer the item and educate the residents and take it up with the second reading of the other pending ordinance that is a companion ordinance. Thank you.
Hold on, let's get.
Density, thank you, Fred. Density is very, very important. And as you mentioned L'Esplanade, Mr. Kaplan. I have, as a manager of the square, I have a call from a realtor asking if the square shopping center will be for sale. So please defer, make sure that the density of this island is really kept at the low density. So don't take this lightly, and I appreciate your discussion for this evening. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, Robert Dusoglu, 785 Glen Ridge. The chamber is very concerned because the businesses could go from, and there's plenty of residential here on the Key. Our commercial is dwindling. It's not a lot, and we will have to try to preserve it. And it's also very important, it's not enough to defer it, but also to truly really understand if there is a mixed use, are there height restrictions that'll be that the state will force us to go or to use that are different than what we're used to, and density and so on. So we really have to truly understand, and it's nice to slap the 35% is a great start, but it's really, it's the things that you don't see, if it's height, density, and so on, and the demand on residential, which is going to be much higher than commercial. So, to preserve the commercial, there has to be some proper thinking in order for it to pan out. And I thank you for considering this.
Okay.
I'm wondering if
excuse me, the public hearing is closed.
Apologies.
Further discussion?
I'm wondering if I want to get a little more edified on the issue as well, and I'm wondering if you have your deference.
Okay, excuse me, can you, staff, can you answer some of the inquiries that you've heard now, again, so that everyone is clear as to what this does or doesn't do? Even if we defer, we need to do this, or we need to give people the information.
Well, what this ordinance does simply is establishes a 35% non-residential requirement if a Live Local Act project were to come forward.
I think you wanted some of the questions about
Yes.
height and things like
Well,
that.
height, so under Live Local Act, it's the highest height within a mile of the property, and it's the highest density within the community. There was also an amendment to the Live Local Act, which will be going into effect from this session, that also addressed floor area ratio, and I think it states 150% of the highest floor area ratio in the community. I don't know if Jeremy, who's not here, has given his position on the highest density in the community or height. It's not non-conforming height, so it would only be permitted height under our zoning code today, and permitted density under today. So when you have some of the taller buildings that were built in the Key many years ago, that would not set the standard. So I think that, again, I don't want to step over Jeremy and give what those numbers are, but that's what the law provides.
So the density would be, I remember, we know what the multifamily ratio is.
Yeah.
It's high.
With the PUDs and
It's a question of, I think, whether the PUDs has the highest density, or I don't know if it's the HR district, or I mean, we can look it up, but
well, that's an
again,
interesting question as to whether the PUD.
it is, and that's something that Jeremy needs to evaluate and give his position on. And one thing we talked about was bringing a Live Local Act implementation ordinance forward. That's what other communities have done. I think now that the session is over and we have we'll be fully informed, I think it's probably prudent to maybe consider that. But that's the parameters. I will address a couple other things. Number one, setbacks still apply. Number two, parking still applies because we don't have transit.
with some reduction. Oh, because we don't
We don't have any of the transit related provisions. Our comprehensive plan still applies to the except for density use FAR. So which includes, by the way, another point in this village that's important to consider, which is that we have a parks concurrency issue. So any developer that comes in would have to meet that parks concurrency issue. So what does that mean? That means that there will probably have to be some mitigation in the form of either land or money to compensate for the deficiency in parks, which is another, another bump for a developer to deal with when looking at this. Let me think what else. I think, that's the parameters. I think I laid it out for you.
You mentioned floor area changed.
Correct. Under the new law, I believe it's 150% of the highest floor area in the, I need to look real fast. Let me confirm for you. But that was just adopted by the legislature and put into law this session. Let me pull it up.
So again, what you're hearing is this ordinance is to protect the commercial area, to protect us from, as much as possible, from further development. Okay, this is what it does. Okay, if you want a little more time, we can give you more time, but this is the opposite of what some people have said. What it does is protects our commercial areas and keeps them as commercial areas, and tries as much as possible, because you can't do it 100%, what it does is eliminates another threat that could come to our island. And that's what we're doing here by protecting our commercial area. Mr. Manager?
So, Mr. Mayor, very, very well said. So, but what I hear you saying, and what I think I hear the rest of the council saying is, our building zoning and planning director will be back on the 1st of July. Why don't me, him, and Chad sit down, put together kind of an information paper about Live Local, and then also what this, as well as the subsequent ordinance, is going to do, so we can clarify it, we can share it with the community, and then what I'd also like to do, similar to what we did last time, where we brought together both Councilmember Kaplan and Councilmember Moss, prior to next meeting, make sure we go through this, we're comfortable with those ordinances before we go forward on August 27th.
That's good. I always think that in these situations, though, you have to tread a little bit carefully, because if you start saying this is what could happen, start to throw some ideas out there to developers, and you don't want to do that either. So we have to be very careful of how we send these messages out when we're doing this. So.
And there's another point. It's not a good idea to stir up the state representative who is sensitive and invested in this bill that is so adverse to our community interest. That is not a good idea.
Even though that bill has some good things that are needed in the larger community.
Yeah. It's fair to say that the purpose behind the bill is laudable and necessary. It may be the worst conceived piece of legislation I can think of to miss the target of an important goal.
Yeah.
Just to answer your question, Councilmember Kaplan, under the new law, we've become preempted now to restrict the floor area ratio of a development below 150% of the highest currently allowed within the village.
Yes. So we basically can't control whether they put multifamily in our commercial or a hotel. We can't control the height based on the highest height. We can't control the density, because they can choose whatever highest density that we have, and we can't control now the floor area. So what we're trying to do is find what we can control and try to make it harder for this type of project to come. So,
and specifically, as Ed said, economically unviable to the fullest extent we can.
But are we comfortable we've explored all options to make sure that we really put a tight noose on this one? And that's what I'm going at more than anything else, because I can see a lot of, good points here. I'm certainly not as learned on the subject as you are, but I do feel a sense that we may owe it to the public to really look deeper and continue to research this. And again, going to what you said about is there harm in deferring this, I'm just wondering, if we should just do that and just take a look at this. I'll second your motion.
You're seconding the motion of
Yeah,
what?
I'm going to second the motion to defer.
To defer.
To defer.
Okay.
Yeah, because I want to take a look at this. I feel more comfortable with that.
But I think what you're saying, I'm 100% correct, but I don't think we need to find the silver bullet. We should just start passing things and we keep looking.
We should continue
for other
to
ways. Yeah.
prove that we are here for exactly the reasons that the public wants. We don't want higher density. We want to make sure that we put away with this, Live Local Act and do whatever we can and exhaust all our possible options and all the possible ideas that we have. And I certainly want to be more learned in my vote. So I wouldn't, I think more I listen to this, the more I want to second your motion. So
maybe as a first reading, I think we.
Does your motion still stand?
We had a couple of ideas that were new. I think Steve's point about Brett and I getting together and pre-gaming this is an excellent idea. We should do that. So
I think the direction was for that to occur, and with input with Jeremy on the additional items that Councilmember Moss had brought up at the last meeting.
And as far as your information pack, Mr. Manager, I think it's important too that we've taken several steps, and we will continue to take more steps to make it difficult to make sure that we find a way outside of this preemption, right?
No, I think you're absolutely correct, and I think Councilmember Moss said it well. We're not going to find the silver bullet right away. It's going to be a step-by-step process. But if there's something that's obviously standing right there, looking at us straight in the eyes, let's take this opportunity. Let's keep them from going to 100%. Let's keep them at 65.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. So I agree with you. Let's move it step by step by step.
Okay, so what we now have in front of us is a a motion to defer. Mr. Kaplan, is that your motion?
I probably ought to renew it because it died.
Yes.
And
So
if
I'll
I
renew
could, if you can, it should be, and so we don't have to re-advertise, we can make a motion
To
defer to a date certain of the August 27th meeting at, 6 p.m. or later at the councilwoman here in these chambers.
Good with that?
That's my motion.
Okay, and I'll second your motion.
I do have one question. Is there any risk of further preemption that would keep us from moving forward on this?
No.
Well, this session's over.
Yeah.
So,
Just wanna make sure.
Obviously
next year.
next year there's always something else. If you may recall that last year we came to you and said FAR is a big restriction that affects Live Local coming to the village. Well, now FAR has been swiped away. So,
So, okay, in the absence of just going along with my colleagues, I was ready to vote yes on this item today, but we will defer to the council's wisdom and defer the item to August 27th. Any further discussion on the issue?
Ed,
Mr. Vasquez.
To put a fine point on this decision, we are as protected right this minute on the basis of the actions that we've taken prior to tonight as we would be if we adopted this tonight.
Correct, because we have the zoning in progress in place, which you guys adopted, and you dictated that if anybody comes in today while we're drafting these regulations for a Live Local project, they would have to develop at 35%.
But this is absolutely the right thing to do.
A teaser for the
that's
community.
why-
It absolutely is. I think the idea is just to continue to explore as many options as we can, and at least for mine, I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with the vote I have.
Teaser, I will be supporting this on August 27th,
Either
just
way.
in case there's any
I have
question.
one quick question, Joe.
One quick question.
To Mr. Chad, is it possible on August 27th, when we come back, that we also change the parking requirements if we want to? Or do we have to re-advertise and do that separately?
Yeah, I would, if we want to address parking, we would do it in a separate ordinance because
Thank
it
you.
would exceed the title.
Okay.
Okay.
My question.
Chad, can you call a roll on this?
Sure.
Motion to defer.
It's a motion to defer to a date certain of August 27th at 6 p.m. or later in these council chambers. By the way, the reason why I say that is because the law changed that now we do need to announce that to do a motion to defer. Let me start with Vice Mayor McCormick,
Yes.
Councilmember Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinas,
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Yes.
Mayor Rasco,
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan,
Yes.
Councilmember London.
Yes.
Can I retire from this role? Clerk? Am I done for the night on it?
Okay, and now we'll shift over to the budget presentation. This is the very, very first step of a very initial estimate that we have, and we will walk through this at a high level as we will have other opportunities to drill down on a lot of these numbers. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the opportunity to go through this tonight. And I want to reiterate exactly what you just said. This is a budget estimate that we're going to present this evening. It was kind of funny. Last week, I told some of my colleagues that we were presenting our budget estimate this week, and they said, "What do you mean you're doing it so early?" So the good news, traditionally in Key Biscayne, we do this early. And we do this for a reason. We do this so that, number one, we have an opportunity to have this discussion far enough in advance to really think through what we want to invest in for the next fiscal year. It also gives the opportunity for our public to see what we're thinking and be a part of this process. So what we're going to do is present to you tonight, again, our budget estimate. I'm going to walk through some introductory slides. And then I'll turn it over to the Chief Financial Officer, Benjamin, to walk you through in detail, as well as Colleen, as we go through the capital improvement program. So if you could, who's got the switch? If you could, Jennifer, please. So this is why we're here tonight. I just went over that. So let's go to the next slide because that's the most important one. This tells you how we got here. And so as you know, the administration holds a strategy session every April. We go through all the information that we've received over the past year. We bring it together and begin to put together a strategy that's going to drive us through the next 3 years. We then bring that to the council in May, as we did this year, receive your feedback. Obviously, we tweak it, we refine it, we begin to put in motion a budget that we want to bring forward for the next fiscal year. Here we are tonight with the budget estimate, and there's two things we want to walk away with tonight, is setting our millage cap, and then also receiving your guidance to move forward for this summer to refine that budget so that when we come forward on September 10th at our first budget hearing, we can present and make a decision on what we want the budget to be for fiscal year 25. We've added one additional step this year, and as you can see in highlighted bursts there, right there about in the middle of the slide, on August 14th, we will actually do a community budget workshop. We'll ask the community to come together. The CFO and I will present the not just the budget itself, but also how the budget is developed, so they understand the process and how we get to where we are. So we committed to that last year, and we will in fact do that. By the end of August, we will present to you in advance, the council, that you have an understanding of where we are before we go forward with our recommendation or our proposed budget on September 10th. So that walks through step by step by step until we get to, I believe it's September 24th is our second budget hearing, with the intent of having a final millage set, a final budget set, so we can move forward into the next fiscal year. Next slide. This is the agenda, and I know you all have had an opportunity to look through this. The same agenda we use each year. The only thing that's a little bit different this year, in there, after we go through our budget, our baseline budget estimate, we're going to go through the 9 focus areas as we discussed during the strategy session. I know you know them, but if you want us to stop and have one of the directors go forward and have a conversation about that, you may do that. And then we'll go forward to the proposed new initiatives, which is where we will be able to make some decisions, have a long conversation. That's why I expect most of the conversation will be tonight on some of the new initiatives. So next slide, please. This obviously is our organizational chart. Next slide. These are our vision, missions, values, and our goals. Next slide. And again, I do this so that this kind of sets the stage for what we're trying to do this evening. Again, if people have been following us over the last couple years and the last couple months, this is something that we've been going through our strategy sessions. These are some of our major achievements over the last year. Next slide, please. We bring this up as we did during the strategy session because we, as we do every 2 years, we did a resident survey, and these are the topics that were of most interest to our residents. The ones as you see there in green, and then also to the right we have our top capital efforts that our residents asked us to do. Of course, this is just one of many inputs that we receive from our residents to make these decisions and put together this budget. Next slide. Again, as we do every year, we do our SWOT analysis. We had this conversation during the strategy session, and I think this also guides us through into our budget. Next slide. So that came down to what we identified as our 9 focus areas, and I think this comes right out of our SWOT analysis and right out of our survey results we've got. And as you can see, and these things I think most people would recognize right here in this room. First one is let's try to alleviate traffic. Let's make sure we maintain safe streets. We had a long conversation about that just tonight. We want to make sure we have community safety. That's very important to all residents. I think we all want to reduce the flooding that we face on our island. More and more, we're also recognizing the need to making sure that we have power reliability and that we address that problem. We continue to address our maintenance and repair, but as we continue to age as a village, not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector, we got to make sure that we put our time, our money, and our effort on ensuring that we maintain what we have. One of the things we pride ourselves on are the amazing community programs and events that we have, and so we want to make sure that we continue to provide those programs and events to our residents. Part of those programs and events are our athletic fields, our parks, and our beach. And then lastly, we owe it to our community to make sure that we communicate clearly and effectively while at the same time ensuring that we collaborate with our partners, whether they be at the county level, the state level, other municipalities, or even the federal level, to make sure that we are receiving the resources and the support that we need to move forward. So those are our 9 focus areas. We use those to set the stage. What I'll do now is I'll turn it over to Benjamin to walk us through our budget and how we developed our budget, beginning with revenues.
Manager, can I make some comments before we move into the numbers really
Certainly.
quick? All right. Just a couple critiques looking at this. One of the things I think that's really important that we should do as an exercise when we're doing this is, and I'm glad you guys have a list of all the achievements we covered. I really want to know also, what did we not achieve? I think that's really important. It keeps us very honest about, hey, we didn't get to this, why? You know, what was the reasoning? Was it a funding reasoning? Was it a time? Was it a delay? So that we know how to kind of structure ourselves to the next budget. And I think it's really important that we do that. And I love the highlights. I wish there was a little bit more information in it. Like for instance, like improved village-wide landscaping. It's a very general thing. It's like improved by doing ABC or whatever, something very, you know, whatever it is, you know, increasing 10 guys out there working and whatever it is, it gives us a little bit more. And then the thing on the 9 items, I just noticed this, and I'm sure it's in it, and it's just a little bit difficult to see, but I would think that one of our focus areas should be enhancing and protecting the quality and character of our neighborhood. I think it's hard to see where that goes. I saw some stuff about trees, but that's under flooding. I don't know if I really associate trees with flooding. There's a lot of things missing in there about, you know, zoning, like what we were just talking about, and other things that we're going to be doing with zoning and with our vision plan and stuff like that, that kind of fall under that area. So that might be another one that you want to look at. And I did see that we have...
Say that again.
Oh, sorry.
I actually like what you said.
I said enhance and protect the quality and character of our neighborhood.
Okay.
Or our village, whatever way you want to say it. Then I looked at, like, there's one for reduced flooding, enhanced power reliability, perform maintenance and repair. I like that. It's just the thing is I kind of dissected a little bit differently. And again, this one, I leave it up to you. You can take it or leave this one. But I kept thinking to myself, like, one of our main focuses really is protecting from large storm or storm resiliency. That's like our main focus, but it's kind of like intertwined with flooding and reliability. It's kind of like, it's not very specific. Like, for sure, flooding is an issue, but there's also storm impact, right? That we really are focused, and that's one of our main focuses up here. So I don't know if it should be just kind of rearranged a little bit in there. So these are just kind of minor things, but I just wanted to bring that up before we go into the numbers. So.
No, I think that's good input, and you know, it's interesting. I mean, I'd like to be able to write more about these highlights and achievements that we have in there. I like to put it on one slide because we could be there for a long time. I do like the idea of things that we didn't achieve, but in reality, many of those turn out to be some of our weaknesses and threats we face. So although we may not, you know, specify specifically, they become some of the ones that we have done here, or things that we will find out further, that projects that we've rolled over into next year.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of evident what we didn't do.
Yeah, and
I like the idea. Sorry,
go ahead.
I like the idea of, you know, ensuring and securing and protecting the character of our village. I think that's very important, and we'll see how that fits in. I struggled with the storm thing versus, you know, can you combine flooding? Can you combine power reliability? Sure, can you call that utilities? But in reality, you're really working with different people and their different functions and different actions. So I really wanted to be clear this year, to be very specific on what actions we want to achieve.
Okay.
You know, most of the power stuff we're going to be working with FPL. Most of the flooding stuff is, you know, things that we're already moving forward on, and there's other folks that we work with. But I get what you're saying. A lot of those, the purpose of that is to protect ourselves from storms. But this is really turning around on what actions, specific actions we're going to achieve. But I like to see what we can do about the character of the village and how we can add that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Two more.
Some of the threats, for example, to just epilogue on this conversation, are just not budgetary. You know, the whole thing with preemption is a threat, but it's not something that's going to become an action item and be the subject of an appropriation.
Yeah, it'd be more
Good
part
point.
of a strategy plan.
Yeah.
But that might not affect budget.
It's time and effort. I mean, obviously, we got to put manpower on it. We got to put thought on it.
You know, and I split the quality of life, the character of the village. We've talked a lot about land development regs needing to be more robust and evolve. But that's not a budget issue.
Yeah, I was thinking too in terms of not achieve, when we brought the budget surplus amendment ordinance to you guys a couple months ago, remember most of that surplus was created by excess revenues. If we actually looked at the expenditure side, we were within, I think it was about 5% on the operational side. So operationally, I think we achieved most of what was done. Also, the second part, which I think the manager alluded to, we'll get into tonight on the capital projects, the ones that are rolled forward. I think Colleen will kind of walk you through where these timing difference. Are we waiting on an order? Was the item procured? Was the project delayed? So there's probably specific reasons, and we'll call each one of those out as to why they weren't completed during the fiscal year.
Yeah, and I think that the exercise of doing that, especially your department heads doing it, they know by this time next year, I need to show that I did it because I'm going to show that I didn't do it. So it keeps people, moving. And if you're never showing the stuff that you're not achieving, only stuff you are achieving, stuff can easily just get kicked down the road. So I think it's very important that we look at that. And it may not be a fault of a director or a department or the manager. It can even be our fault or something outside, but at least we know and we can better strategize for the next year.
Which is one of the reasons why we did come up with the focus areas and the very specific actions to it. Like if you look at, and I don't want you to go to it and I don't want anyone to move the slides, but on slide 21 where we have alleviate traffic, we have 8 different actions against it. So I'm going to track those actions as we move forward, and I'll report those to you on a periodic basis to let you know where we are. We'll use those next year, hopefully, for the highlights and the achievements, but those that we do not achieve, we'll make sure that we highlight those as well.
Excellent.
So that's why I'm trying to create this very specific focus area so we know where to put our time, our money, and our effort to make sure we achieve these.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, so with that said, let's jump into some of the numbers. So on June 1st, the Miami-Dade County Property Appraiser provides a preliminary estimate to all the municipalities on their preliminary taxable value for the next fiscal year. Key Biscayne's crossed that $10 billion threshold, $10.7 billion, which is a 7.2% increase from the prior year. So I wanted to show the trajectory of kind of where we were, where we are now. So we had from 2018-19, 3 straight years of declining value. We kind of leveled off, and then we've had 3 strong years of property value growth. It was interesting in looking at Key Biscayne in relation to some of the other 35 municipalities that the county average was 10%. So we're actually lagging the county average, and we're actually one of the lower municipalities on that list, which could be to a myriad of reasons. I looked at some of the similar characteristics between us and the lower ones, and I did notice a lot of them were coastal communities as well. So it's something we're obviously monitoring. We also know in about 5-6 days or so, the property appraisal will give the final valuations in July 1st that we're going to use when we actually set the maximum millage. So it's a little premature tonight. We're going to go through the whole presentation using this $10.7 billion estimate, but it's going to be refined in about a week's time. And that's the number we'll use when we send out the trim forms.
From historical data, from June 1st to July 1st, what's been the average or the median?
About 0.2 more, so maybe we'll get closer to 7.5% is kind of where I'm thinking we'll be.
And it usually has worked that way.
Usually, it's been interesting. In the last 2 years, there were much bigger differences, just because I think of the huge property valuation growth. The appraiser's office was still probably valuing, when I spoke with them last year, they were still valuing some of their 4th quarter data up until June, July. They had a big adjustment. But if I look over the long course, it's generally not that big of an adjustment, but in the last 2 years, it's been bigger. So, I mean, I'll go out on a whim and say closer to 7.5, but I'll obviously, as soon as it comes out, we'll let you guys know what that is.
And can you, for the public, tell everyone what the number includes there, the construction versus sales and what have you?
Yeah, so the property appraiser uses obviously sales data to capture this amount. So they're looking at sales of residential, commercial, multifamily properties, also new construction. That's something that if you look at Key Biscayne compared to other municipalities, we obviously don't have a lot of new construction. When you look at something like a city of Miami, they benefit a lot from new folios and new value coming on the books.
The measure that's on the ballot that deals with the homestead exemption, could pass. do we factor that, that won't have a this year effect, would it? That's the COLA bump?
That's next year.
I believe that would be for next year, but that definitely would be valued into this because what essentially would happen was right now the cap on a homestead property is the lesser of 3% or the cost of living adjustment. If they lower that cap to 2%, it would have an impact on the preliminary taxable value, which would presumably be lower. Key Biscayne, about 39% of our properties are homesteaded, very low.
Oh.
Very low compared to some other municipalities.
It's very interesting.
If you look at,
I thought it was less than 30%.
I thought it was 35, but that's
30. As of last year's data, I just looked at this. It's 39. But if you look at other more residential communities, there's 70s, 80s, Miami Lakes, Pinecrest, etc. So Miami Springs, they'd be impacted much more significantly, but it still would have an impact, just maybe not as much in Key Biscayne as some of the others.
Mm-hmm.
Besides, obviously, we know property taxes, ad valorem revenues are our main revenue generator. There's also state revenue shares based on sales tax. Strong economic data continues with something we look at every month to see our figures and project not only the end of 24, but also the next almost 15 months to get our 25 projections. In terms of our own charges for services that we control, we're looking at our Parks and Rec usage fees. If you remember last year, we increased the community center membership. We're also going to be looking at permitting and policy changes to see if those are the right, if in order to right size our fees compared to the value and the services that we're providing. And then lastly, interest income. You guys have heard me talk a lot about this, and this is probably the biggest contributor to that surplus we had last year, is we keep benefiting from high interest rates. It's something that's not in the village's control, but as long as interest rates are high, we're going to leave our money invested, and obviously we're going to benefit from that as long as possible. Just so you guys are aware, we currently are receiving about 5.5% on our reserves.
What's been our interest income this last year?
For the general fund alone, for fiscal year 23 was a shade over $2 million.
$2 million interest income. Great.
So this slide is going to break down all the different revenue sources. As I mentioned, ad valorem is obviously the main one, and that's about 72% of the total revenue. One of the things Steve and I have constantly been looking at is how do we diversify so we're not so reliant on ad valorem. As you saw on the previous slide, we've seen years in Key Biscayne where we've gone up significantly, we've declined significantly. So we want to make sure that these other revenue sources are stable and strong, so we don't need to rely on millage as much. In order to give, I think Councilmember Moss, you would appreciate this, we moved some items below the line to kind of keep the steady operations up top, and then other items like we had in 2021, that $11 million was when we refinanced the debt. That's kind of an outlier there. In 2022, there was $6.5 million from the ARPA grant as a response to COVID, so we moved that below the line to kind of show what are just the total revenues operationally. I do want to caveat that this ad valorem amount of $31.76 million, to calculate that number, we use our existing millage rate. So our existing millage rate of 3.1245 at this year's $10.7 billion valuation. That's not to say we're going to use that millage rate. When we get through the course of tonight, you'll see what that millage rate will allow us to do in terms of new initiatives, projects, and our operational budget. But just for presentation purposes, that's how we came up with that number here.
Go back.
Yeah, go back. I have a couple of questions here. Go ahead.
So for example, we believe that interest is going to be going down. Is that number? How did you come up with this number here?
Yeah, that's why I've been more cautious because, like I mentioned, all the experts predict it's going to go down, but they also predicted it would go down already, and it hasn't. So I am very cautious in where I estimate interest income to be because, like I said, it's out of our control, and I also don't want the village to get too reliant on it.
We can't be reliant on that at all.
Once that, I've been here years when it was 0.2%, and if you start building that into your budgets and then it disappears, you're going to have to now impact your ad valorem revenue to make up the difference. So it's a very cautious number looking at in case, it's tough now. We're in June. Most of this work that we've prepared is done in May, so we're really estimating 16 months into the future, which if I predicted interest rates, I wouldn't be standing here in the podium in front of you.
You'd still be here.
You would be here.
The best place to work. What are you talking about?
Loves his job.
All right,
Excuse me, on the interest income, 24 budgeted, $1 million. How accurate is that?
He's saying it's going to be $2 million, right?
No, to actual.
We're going to be about $2 million. We're going to be a little over $2 million.
So what's the 41 million really look like in reality? Actual.
Well, just if you add interest alone, we're at 42.1. If you say another $1 million of interest on the other items where we are exactly to budgeted, maybe 43, but it's early to say. Closer to probably 43, but close.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a couple of things. Has anything moved in this from year to year, or everything's still in the same line?
Same.
All right. So why is the miscellaneous revenue this year dropping so far?
So we had items in there, I think insurance, things that were hitting an actual like one-time insurance proceeds or sales of old fleet vehicle cars that we haven't been able to get cars, so we haven't been able to put any to auction. There's been the miscellaneous item, it's not a huge dollar amount, but
I was just curious of why that
they were little one-off things that were not like categorized.
And the last thing I wanted to say about this, and this I think speaks volumes for having a good CFO. If you look at our ad valorem taxes, especially between 2022 and 2023, it goes up maybe $2 million. But you look at the bottom line of total revenues before the grants and all that kind of stuff and debt, it goes up almost $7 million. So he was able to find ways to try to increase revenues other than ad valorem, which I think shows when you look at this, it's incredible to see. And I know you, the manager, and staff have been working on that. So I applaud you for finding other ways to maximize revenues.
Yes.
We also talked before last year, and since then, in order for us to make a half intelligent decision, you show us 24 budgeted, 23 actual, and of course our year doesn't end for a couple months. In order to make a decision that's meaningful, if you're going to go through July 1st, we should have numbers budgeted 24, actual through July 1st, 24, prorated in certain cases like ad valorem, etc., not just on a cash basis, but on an accrual basis, so that we as a council know where we're going. I mean, otherwise, we don't get the right picture here.
And that's something that we will show for our budget hearings and
good, thank
summer,
you.
because in order to make the 25 estimates, I'm looking at the trends of the 24 data all the way. I mean, there's no other way to do it unless you know exactly where you are in order to guess or estimate for next year.
Okay,
So you'll have
thank you.
All right.
How far are you with year to date? Where are you? 7 months, 8 months?
It's a tricky answer depending on the revenue source. If we talk about ad valorem, I'd say I'm over 90%. The bulk of it comes in November and December. But when we talk about, let's say, charges for services or our community center, every year we get a spike in back to school in August and September. So that one, if I showed you the year-to-date number, you'd say you're wildly inaccurate. We're never going to.
I'm saying making an accrual basis. If you know that not 8% per month, but August is a 12%, so accrue that at basically 12%. That's what I'm saying. Give me an accrual, not a cash basis. It's your best guess.
Yeah, and I have that.
That's
The one
your
is we
best
look
guess.
at we're constantly monitoring the franchise fees and utility taxes. I can tell you guys every month in September it peaks as air conditioning usage goes up.
And
So
same thing.
we're trending all that stuff, so we know even if that month hasn't passed, we know based on prior year what to expect for the next.
So you'll be making those adjustments.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's already in this number, but I'll show you guys.
But give us the thing so we can look at it.
Okay.
Because we don't know what 24 is. You just said 24 budget, we don't know what actually happened.
You will in September.
In September. We want to know before September because we're going to vote on a millage before September.
But we'll present it for you in order to make a decision in September. You'll have that information.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
In order to highlight the story, I think Councilmember Moss was touching on this as well. Status of a lot of grants and reimbursements. I know we come up here a lot of our capital projects, and we talk in our CAP slides about how do we utilize other people's monies or getting reimbursed for What's included here is also reimbursements for whether it was a named storm from FEMA as well, and also I know the manager and his lobbying team working on appropriations as well. So obviously this has been the focus. Anywhere we can capitalize on money that's not coming from Key Biscayne taxpayers will obviously be a priority, so we can lessen that reliance on ad valorem.
As Brett said before on another item, I mean, this is something that we should all be very proud of. And it's commendable how well staff has done on this area here. The
Where's
grants.
Colleen? She's still here. There she is.
Yeah. So
She's our hero.
yeah.
Excuse me, another
Benjamin,
thing.
I have a quick question.
Grants and
on-
reimbursements. I assume reimbursements were close to 100% chance of getting paid back, right?
Correct.
Grants is a maybe. Yes?
Well, applying for the grant, you never have 100%
No, I'm
success
saying
rate.
when you
Once we're
list the
awarded
number-
the grant and
when you
we're
list the number for grant, is that the grant has already been said, okay, we're going to give you the money, or are we still waiting for them to tell us they're going to give us the money?
So most of those grants are reimbursable. We have to expend the money first, so that's why the status of it matters, right? We get awarded the grant, like we brought the Neat Street grants tonight.
So you're saying then grants and reimbursable are 100% certain?
As long as we do.
As long as we
Yeah, we
follow.
have to
So
perform.
what we did here,
Right.
council member, there are other categories that we have which are pursuing grants, but we did not add those categories. What you have here is, I can't read it, but no way awarded. So those are grants that have been awarded
Okay,
to
well,
us.
that's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
get
so
at.
all of these are ones that
100% for a real
yes,
thing. Okay, good.
available
For
for
real.
us to use.
And that's most of the reason why we have these big overruns is because we're not budgeting the grants in, but then we're getting new grants coming in, and that's why we're getting these big overruns coming in because they help. But we can't budget it because we don't know if we're going to get it or not. So
And that's one of the things is we'll have that conversation later. I'm sure as we're beginning to move forward for a major infrastructure program, we're beginning to stack the money. Right, we got to be able to make sure that we have the money on hand in order to invest in this infrastructure program going forward. And a lot of it is right here.
We saw it today with the trees. There's an opportunity there to apply for grants. So it may not be you have opportunities to offset. I think it would be good knowing, of course, that, and this is just a food for thought, that perhaps, you may not get the grant, but it's a good idea for council to know what's out there. And, because a lot of folks are out there thinking, it's going to be this big, but I know you're going to work at offsetting some of that cost. I know you guys are going to do that.
Well, we do.
Question is, without creating any expectations, kind of saying, hey, there's all these possibilities out there for us to get additional.
I'll let Colleen do that because we took probably a 80 line spreadsheet and turned it into 4 lines here. So if you want to kind of talk about what's behind that, so
the public doesn't know. And
Right. So this is, to your point, this is very conservative. But maybe another column that would say potential or
maybe.
Yeah.
Well, we'll pursue it.
Maybe.
That's I think that's what we'll call it.
I understand why you're not doing it because
Yeah.
then it creates an expectation that we have to commit to. But I think for I don't know how you would craft it, but I think you need.
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. This is a budget. So we want to make sure that we're just counting stuff that
we
we
gotta
know.
be straight on that.
Yeah.
of
So
course.
we could obviously be happy to show you what we're going after, but really we can't count on that when it goes into the budget. There's 2 different things we can do that for. But we'll be happy to show that to you.
Double-edged sword. Never know.
All right, update on our current debt that we have outstanding. I'm happy to announce all of our debt is under 1 3/4%, and the most of it is at 1.
Isn't that really high? I mean, don't you think we should get rid of that? Come on.
I'm sure
Yeah,
municipalities look at this like, what?
Yeah, you're not gonna, you're the envy of every municipality. You're not gonna get these rates if we had to borrow these days. I will highlight though, because of our debt cap, with our $10.7 billion valuation, that's $107 million debt cap. We have about $7 million outstanding. So for the first time, we actually have just hair under $100 million. And maybe come July 1st with the new property appraisers info, we will actually get to that $100 million of available debt cap. So I know it's kind of interesting. We're in 24 now, talking about 25 budget. In 2020, we passed the $100 million bond. Now it's actually feasible to get to that number. So I thought it was interesting that it finally hit on almost exactly that number this year.
Do you know what approximate bond rates are going right now?
Yeah, I was at a recent conference. 4 mid-4s
Municipal bond rates for use of the
on
bonds.
a general obligation bond, mid-4s, mid 4%, somewhere around there.
AAA rated?
Okay, then we're going to jump into a highlight of our other funds. Besides the general fund, we have 5 other funds for specific purposes. The first one is our transportation special revenue fund. That fund takes in local options gas taxes and also the county's half-cent sales tax for the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust. We in turn use that money to provide the freebie services. We're now up to 9 freebies. In addition to using the CATT money, we leverage that to get a FDOT grant that allows for 50% reimbursement for an additional 3 vehicles. So that's how we got up to the 9 freebies that we're currently operating. The next one is the Parks, Rec, and Open Space Land Trust Fund. By the end of 24, we're expecting a balance of $5 million. For everyone remembers, that takes 1% of the ad valorem. Also, it's benefiting because it has a nice substantial $4.5 million balance. It also gets a lot of interest income. So between the two of them, it's growing at about $500,000 a year at this point. The third one, and this is the newest one, is the Building Special Revenue Fund. If you guys remember, this used to be commingled with the general fund. We pulled it out because of the very restrictive state language that mentions that you have to use building permitting revenue only to offset the cost of enforcing the building code. You'll notice the balance goes down. That's by design. If you remember, there was a capital project to improve the building department area. Those are eligible costs that we can use the building fund for, specific to the building department to make those improvements. So it's by design it goes down. It's also we're monitoring those balances as well because the Florida State statute is very restrictive as to how much balance you can keep in your building funds.
And Benjamin, are we every year we're supposed to be looking at what our permit fees are doing and how that's balanced? Are we looking at that? Because I remember we were way off at one point. We had to adjust it. Are we good now?
We are good now. So the state code says it cannot be more than the last 4 years of average expenditures. So if we end at 1.3, we'll be below that amount. But that's something we look at every single year.
What I was meaning, and I guess it goes more toward the expense side, but is our building fees close to revenue neutral into our activities? Because we were way too high at one point, then we dropped way too low, and we were trying to get it just under.
That's the design. That's what we monitor. It is a challenge because it's probably our most volatile revenue because you look at what happens if there's when it went negative, it was after the pandemic and there was no activity. The shop was closed 3 years. Our fees were low. We had to do that adjustment to get it back up. I'm comfortable where it is now in matching our expenses, but we also know we have some 40-year certs, 50-year certs coming online. And as soon as those do, it may make our revenues out of to exceed where it needs to be. And then we'd lower the fees to stay under the state statute.
Just to be sure, just to be sure, the state statute does require if you go above that 4-year average, right? 4-year average, that you then have to reconsider your fees and reduce them accordingly.
Are you adjusting
or spend it, right?
Or spend it, yeah, but obviously only if you have a reason to spend it.
Are you adjusting that annually?
We haven't needed to since we did the last one. We went from when we adjusted it last time, we were at a negative balance in the building fund. So we built it back up, and now it's a healthier balance. It doesn't exceed the 4 years average yet, so we haven't needed to. But it's something we don't adjust it annually, but it's something we monitor more than annually to make sure that it's within where it needs to be. Or if not, we'll come to you guys and tell you we need to lower them or to adjust it accordingly.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, historically with our previous manager, we lowered it, and then they were supposed to adjust it high, and they forgot, and it went on for like a year and a half, and that's why we went into the negative, and they forgot to adjust it back up. So we caught that and adjusted it. So it was an unfortunate mistake, but
the last thing you want to do is have volatile costs, right? You want people coming in and going to do this work. Obviously it may change a little bit, but you don't want it to change, 150%. Maybe 10% left, 10% right is effective.
Just want a short aside on.
Joe.
Is that you, Allison?
Sorry. Yes, it is. Benjamin, I have a question about these funds and the interest that we earn on them. Do we keep it dedicated to each fund, or does that just go into general reserves? Or
yeah, it stays within the fund.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and that's a very good point. Just because somebody will come and say, "Oh, you have all these balances here. Why don't you spend them on some?" you can't. These are enterprise funds. They are only allowed to be used for whatever a source they are set up for.
That's
And
correct.
some of them are being like spent. Like for instance, solid waste. We spend almost 100% of that each year, and it refills each year. Spend, refill, right?
That's a
So-
recycling fund,
Yeah.
Rotating fund.
So a good example, Councilmember McCormick, is the PROS Land Trust Fund. Is that has the most significant balance here, so that's benefiting the most from that interest income. Because that one doesn't spend money unless there's a targeted acquisition,
Right.
and then it spends big. But in year to year, we don't spend it down, so that benefits from both the 1% and the interest income.
Just as an aside, to remind the manager, months ago, we talked about doing an anonymous survey to see how our building department was doing. Remember to follow up with that so that we can use some of this money for good reason.
Yes, sir. Will do.
All right, so the two at the bottom, the enterprise funds, stormwater and solid waste. Yes, you mentioned for solid waste, that's all contracted out based on the price of that contract. Then we set the rates that we, for a single family residential pickup for garbage and recycling. So that's pretty easy. It's just a pass through that we collect and pay on. You will remember that for stormwater and solid waste, we did move a few years ago to the tax rolls, and that's obviously helped our collections significantly. So we don't have that problem we had in the past where we were borrowing from the general fund and having to go at it. Good note on solid waste too is we've done, our team in finance has done a great job on past due collections. We're putting the remaining balance, about $100,000 or so onto, we made a deal with the property appraiser to put them on our tax bill coming up. So those accounts, we've been sending notices for over 5 years now, and they haven't paid, so they're going to get a surprise on their tax bill when that amount shows up. But once that's done, we're going to be totally out of the solid waste billing and collection business, so that'll be a good news story.
In terms of our total ad valorem collected, where is that number at?
About 96%. I know Councilmember London and I always talk, we budget, the state puts out their trim notice, and 95%, you can't go less than that. And I always mention the reason for that is because if our residents pay early, they're entitled to up to a 4% discount if they pay in November. I monitor those stats very closely, and about 75% of our residents do pay it in November, about 15% then in December, and the other amounts trickle in. So that 4% discount, that's why we generally average around 96. Also, we monitor how many.
But eventually you'll collect.
Oh, we always do.
Eventually, you collect all. Yeah.
Okay.
Never fail.
All right, so now going back to our general fund, our reserve projections and goals. This is, I think we want to give more transparency on this topic last year, so we want to include it again, obviously, this year to see kind of where we were, where we are, and our policy is to maintain a 40% general fund reserve and emergency at 10%. So if you look at where we ended 23, we exceeded the general fund reserve. That's why we came back a couple months ago with that surplus amendment, where we then dedicated those funds to certain projects, which brought us back down to where we were comfortable within line with our goal going forward. I think that'll be the practice then at the end of fiscal year 24 as well, where we come back to you with any surplus as well to make sure that we stay at these intended goals and then use those excess dollars to fund certain projects so we don't have to raise the revenue in ad valorem when we get them done.
But this is really unfair to our taxpayers, because we're taking money from them that we're not using, that they could be using or investing. We're saying, we'll take your money and we're going to invest it better. And you're going to tell me, yeah, but some catastrophe might happen. We might need the money. And I'll say to you, why don't we just get a standby letter or line, so we're not going to worry if some catastrophe does happen. We have that money available. Why do we need 40%? It's not, I mean, it's 50%. You got 10% emergency plus general reserve.
And I was going to ask whether there's a thought about increasing the reserve, considering the intensity and frequency of storms, for example.
My question is somewhere in the middle. Just walk us through why 40%. What is the best practice for other municipalities? I understand that we are more susceptible to certain things. I understand that we're also earning quite a great interest here. Just walk us through all your justifications as listed on here and make it
Let's
really
walk through
clear
one
to everyone on why we're here.
Sure. So I think in the justification there, I want to go over each one of those and explain why we came up with this. So the first is liquidity for economic downturns, emergency, and unexpected expenses. I think that goes without saying. If there's an emergency expenditure, you want to have money in your emergency reserves. I heard about the line of credit, but I'd feel more comfortable having funds available on hand if there was a legitimate emergency.
So is there another
line of credit? Sorry, and a line of credit's not earning interest.
When you pull in the money, it would.
Right.
But
so on that point, if you had a negative year where we didn't grow like this year 7%, let's say you're at 0%. Do you see us going to that reserve to take care of some items in the operation side, or only on the capital side?
it would be an option. I'd try to find any way to not have to touch the reserves and balance the budget without dipping into them, but having it available if need be, that's one of the benefits of having it.
In the downturn years that were sequential, I don't think we ever tapped the reserve.
Well, I don't think it's the correct thing to do is to reduce the budget by using reserves. If you're going to reduce the reserve, I don't know how you can do it, give money back to residents or whatever. I don't know how, but once you start messing with the budget, now you have a messed up budget because the next year you're looking back at stuff that's not correct. One of the questions that I have is I would love to have the breakdown of this reserve balance for the general reserve, because my understanding from looking at it years past that there's different sections of this that are in there for certain reasons, and some things I think you can't touch and some you can, and so it's broken down and so at least if we can get a copy of that, and definitely have a copy during our public hearing, because I think that's really important.
So what we have done is most of this is general for any purpose, because what we had, correct, we did have restricted use, but that was like the building fund. Now we've made the building fund separate, so you see the reserve in the building fund. So I've done as much as I can to get restricted money out, so this is only...
So this is just like a bucket of money that's sitting there. We can take money out or not. And then the reason to have the emergency reserve is just so that there's something separate, but in an emergency we can still use the general reserve in an emergency. Right?
Correct.
And that way just keeps it so we can't touch that.
Right, so there is no breakdown in the general reserve. It's that.
There is a portion that I reserve for what we call compensated absences, which is a reserve for expected payouts of I look at vacation, sick, comp time balances of all our employees. We reserve about 50% of that amount to have on hand if there's a run on departures, for instance. But
and for us to fund this reserve, how does that mechanism?
To fund it?
Yeah, if you're going to increase it to 17.6, are we going to do that with a rollover and fund it?
So at the end of fiscal year 24, we have a surplus. We would make the recommendation and say, okay, let's put X amount to get us back to our target, and then anything beyond that, we'd look at some capital projects to fund.
So if we wanted to use the reserve to pay for some of the stuff, would you just bring that into somewhere like a bottom line under the revenue? It can
I wouldn't use the reserve. I wouldn't use the reserve to pay for it. I'd use the current year surplus. We come back at fiscal year 24 with a surplus.
What I'm saying is that what if we set a policy and say we want to go down to 38% or 35%? If we would do that, it would reduce it. What would you do with that money?
We'd have to do an ordinance to say where are we going to put the money towards certain projects. You talked about.
We would move it over to capital, reduce what we would put in capital improvement projects of what we would need it.
That's the ideal place, yeah.
You could
like
do
you
that.
said before, you really don't want to interfere with your operating budget because it artificially pumps it up in a way that you would, the subsequent year you would have an issue with it.
So I think the difference, basically you're confusing two things, in my opinion, Brett. One is income and expenses, that's our budget. Capital or balance sheet is our reserves. They're independent of each other. If we're going to do income and expenses, that's what we're budgeting for. If we need capital to operate because we're going to feel comfortable, that's something completely different. So I don't think one is dependent on the other, and it won't confuse the budget at all.
Yeah,
because the budget should be based on our expenses, not on capital. That basically we're saying take money from the people and put it in the capital balance budget. Nothing to do with operations.
We do budget for capital.
Capital expenditures, that's different than capital just to keep it.
Operating expenditures, yes. No, I agree with that. And then going back to what Oscar says, the justification of 40%, but what about 35%? What about 45%? What's the justification of going down a little bit, going up a little bit? Why
Let me get through that. So the next one is the hedge against the risk of being a barrier island. So you asked about what's best practices, and I will say that best practices is lower than we're recommending here. But also caveat this with, we are a barrier island that maybe have different characteristics than the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, national organization. Their recommendation is 2 to 3 months at hand. So that's about 25, a quarter. Where obviously we feel the need to be higher just based on our geographical constraints and the risks that could be happening in this barrier island. So that's where we differ, but we feel it necessary.
But basically, for looking for a source, it's general reserves, because we might need money. There's other ways, less intrusive to the taxpayer of doing it than taking their money and keeping in a reserve that we don't need.
So on that point about a refund to the taxpayers or taking taxpayer money, I will say this kind of works the opposite, right? By having the reserves, we do get more interest income, which then allows us to put taxes lower than if you didn't have it. Doesn't that?
Listen.
Indirectly does exactly what you're asking.
Yeah, but basically what you're really saying is, again, using that as an income source, right? Your $2 million, whatever.
The interest income.
Yeah, for the interest income. Yeah. And again, you still have this big surplus, and you're trying to keep it at that number, this general reserve, or increase it, which is not necessary. So, I mean, if you didn't have that, well, maybe you budget more accordingly to what your expenses are. I mean, again, it's philosophical. It's basically, do you want the taxpayers to have the money and get it when you need it, if you need it, by either because the millage went up, excuse me, or the assessed value went up, taxable value went up, or do we want to keep a bunch of money here and say, fine, we're better stewards of your money than you are, so we'll invest it and do what we want with it, and right now we're getting a decent return. So in effect, we're implying to the people we're getting a 5% return or whatever, and maybe a 5%, yeah, we're doing the right thing. Maybe when it's down at 1.5%, it's not doing the right thing. You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah. We do, Councilman, but I also want to make sure that Benjamin goes through all these reasons right here, because there is some logic as to why we want to make sure we keep a reserve, and obviously it's got to be the right number, and I
agree. You're going to keep a reserve. The question is, you have a reserve called emergency reserve for emergencies.
But let him go through each one of these, because we use it also for leverage in order to get the grants that we just showed you before. If you don't have that on hand, you can't front the money in order to get the money in
But if you have a standby line of credit, you can get the money
line of credit. Well, let Benjamin walk through each one of these.
So the third one is maintain strong credit rating. So if we look at S&P and Moody's, instead of our available line of credit, they're looking at actual cash.
Benjamin,
in their, yeah.
I'll ask you a question. What is the single largest determinant of Standard & Poor's, Fitch, anybody else determining our ability to pay our debts?
The variability of the income stream.
What is it? It's called what?
Our ad valorem property taxes.
Thank you. Ad valorem, and the difference between the statutory maximum of 30 mils that we're charging now, right? You're allowed to charge 10 mils for schools, village, and local government, right? So I should say county, local, and schools. So we have this big gap between 3 and 10. And we have the ratables. So that is the number one, isn't it?
It is, but I'll show you on their scoring matrix. They do look at cash on hand.
I'm not saying they don't look at anything.
So
I'm talking about.
It's a component. It's a component. They have a long list of metrics that they use.
Is that the largest component?
Financials, which is
the
that
largest
component,
the ability to raise money through real estate taxes. I mean, you know, I know that's the largest thing. So, yes. And then again, you're saying, what is a AAA value to us versus a AA or a single A? All those things have value. So.
All right, let's keep going.
I'm not going to belabor the point.
Well, yeah.
You want to keep a big balance, keep a big balance, but.
Fourth point, higher than usual interest rates. This is one that at least we're not keeping taxpayer money idle, right? It is at least earning interest, 5.5%. It is tax-free to a municipal government. The fifth is investment for our critical capital projects as a funding source. You know, we brought our surplus amendment back, and we were able to pay for the council theater. We were able to pay for St. Agnes Field by using the surplus dollars that mostly were related to interest income and having those reserves. So I think it's nice to be able to pay for additional capital projects without going back to the taxpayers and raising the millage rate, asking for more. And lastly, the matching for time-sensitive grants. The great example of this was the beach nourishment. There's about $1 million we needed, and needed it quickly because there was a grant coming due. We were able to pull from our reserves, and then we supplemented the reserves as soon as we came back with that year's surplus.
What's the most we've ever needed?
That was probably one of the big. That $1 million is probably the highest I've seen yet.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
We'll let him get through the presentation, then you can.
Saw the number.
Sure, go ahead. Ask a question.
Do you mind explaining how you moved from 23 million to 60 million at the end of, because you had a surplus?
Sure. So
you didn't use the full surplus, so it should be even bigger, no?
So there was a.
Okay.
The question was from fiscal year 23 balance of 23.3 to the projected $16.9 million projected surplus at the end of 24. The answer to that is we brought forward a budget amendment. In that amendment, we replenished the $1 million we needed for the beach renourishment project. We identified another $2 million of project, including the St. Agnes Field, including the council theater, the elevator, etc. What's that?
Capital projects.
The capital project. So then that's why it was lowered because of the use of those funds.
But still the surplus is bigger than the expenses that you use. So how you do that?
Those are capital projects, not income.
Not income,
expenses.
right?
You had 23 million at the end of last year.
Yeah, so basically capital
You got a
projects
surplus.
that weren't budgeted in the previous year, but came out of the surplus when it was there, that was all.
Yeah, but the surplus was even bigger than the amount of money you just take out from the surplus. So
It wasn't, it's not budgeted, it's not supposed to come in.
536.
All right, so it's allocated to projects. That's why it goes back down. That's.
Did we use reserves? Two examples that occur to me. These seagrass mitigation after one of the beach renourishments was a big problem out of nowhere. And the Irma debris issue with having to comply with FEMA standards that our contractor hadn't complied with.
I don't know offhand for Irma before I was here, but I do know for the beach nourishment we did this year do it. So yes, there has been times. $1 million was the biggest I've seen though.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot of times that reimbursed it.
Yeah, but I don't remember.
It's just funny.
All right, now we get into the expenditure side and cost drivers. This is obviously 3,000 foot look going down, and when we get into the actual hearings, we'll go detail line by line, department by department. But overall, when we look at our major cost drivers of what, how we came up with our budget estimate, the first line personnel, it's about nearly 60% of our total budget, and personnel went up by 2.5%. The bigger increases were for our professional contractual services. There was obviously a directive 3 years ago to put everything out to bid. And we probably couldn't have picked a worse time to go out to bid when every contractor has raised their prices. But listen, we do encourage that competition to get best prices. It's just what's happened in the market over that time is these contracts come back higher, and that's why we see a significant increase there. And lastly, operations, maintenance, and repair, also a significant increase as well. I remember we had a lot of talk in this council chambers about, yes, it's exciting to put a new capital project, have something shiny and new, but what we've always lacked is maintaining what we have. So I know the manager of public works have really focused on, let's maintain our facilities, let's maintain our streets, roadways, and public areas as well. So that's why I see a significant increase there. Then below the line, decrease in debt service, about $240,000 less than we had last year. And the biggest difference here, and I want to caveat this to where we're going to talk about this presentation going, is the transfer out is obviously less because this is just our baseline budget. If we didn't do any transfers out for capital projects, that $317,000 represents 1% of ad valorem to the land trust. So this is if we say we're doing absolutely no capital projects, our fiscal year 25 budget would be $40,776,000. So we'll get into that decision of how many capital projects we want to do and what that amount looks like. But this is just bare bones, no projects.
Benjamin, on the personnel, where would didn't we give everybody 4% across the board?
We did. The reason this didn't go up maybe as much as originally planned was one of the biggest drivers, and I looked why it only went up 2.5%. In our fire department, we've had a lot of succession planning funding in last year's budget. So we had some one-time costs to get us through that planning. As a result, on the flip side is we have a lot of younger firefighters who replace more senior officers who have been, some of them up to 30 years here. So obviously with that big changeover in personnel, the cost for a younger, more inexperienced person decreased significantly.
I guess the real question is, the 24 budget and the 24 actual, how close are they?
Can I get back, and when we do our budget hearings, I'll have a better, more accurate answer for you.
Benjamin, I just want to say I love this slide. And, I've been trying to trifurcate, I guess you say, these 3 areas in our budget. The only thing I would ask with this slide, could you bring in 21, 22, and 23 like you do on the next slide with these, so we can kind of see how these things are moving. But this makes it much clearer than it has been in the past.
Yeah, and I like the first actual, which Councilmember Lennon's mentioned a couple times.
Can I have just a short, Chief Susan, can you come up a second? Just stay right there. So it's sundown. Can you give us an update on the Luciano?
Yeah, because of the weather, we had to suspend the search and rescue operations. Obviously, the water and no conditions of not having light isn't conducive to searching. FWC is keeping 2 boats out. That's their regular patrol boats in the event that we do get a call for service. We are doing ATV beach patrols. I've spoken to George at the park because we've gotten some leads in the park area there that we worked out throughout the day-to-day, but nothing has turned up. In addition to that, the Coast Guard has left a cutter on the shoreline for us throughout the night in the event that we do get any calls for service. Tomorrow morning at sunrise, we are going to reconvene. We're going to have both of our boats out in the water again, along with FWC, Coast Guard, and resume search and rescue operations again tomorrow. I've been in contact with the family multiple times today, as has FWC. I spoke to the brother as recently as 45 minutes ago and provided him with updates to what we were doing and what our efforts were. The family's aware of where we're at. I also spoke to our detectives who have followed up on several leads. We did send out a bulletin to all of our media partners here locally in Key Biscayne and our 4 major news channels, 4, 6, 7, and 10, who I know have covered this. A bull has been sent statewide to all of our law enforcement partners. So we have exhausted a lot of resources, and we just need to hold on to hope at this point and hope for the best.
Okay, thank you very much. It's lightning out there now. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can we also do something else? Can we set that millage caps? I know that our colleague Fernando is going to have to.
I'm getting delayed a little bit, but
Oh, you're getting delayed. Yeah,
that's all right.
But still, let's go ahead and do that, and then come back to the rest of the presentation.
So if we just wanted to jump in to the decisions to set that final millage.
Yeah.
Here's
slide 37. If they want
37.
Yeah, I want to hit this real quick to get into.
Yeah, why don't we hit this? It just kind of sets a condition for it.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, that was the bare bones budget with no capital improvement projects. To run the baseline budget, it would be a $40.8 million budget. The millage rate required to do that is 2.8003. That means no capital projects. So just so you guys know where we are, we're at 3.125 is our existing millage rate. For 2.8, we could get this whole thing done and pay for just operations. So now, so you know that number, we jump into slide.
Let me add, although he said no capital projects, there are also some additional initiatives that are non-capital as well in the new initiative slide, just to say it's not just capital projects.
So here's the decision making. At the top line here on slide 32, I show that baseline millage rate for just operations at 2.8. And then here's a list of items with the estimated cost. the impact to the millage and how that cumulatively looks. And if you guys see, there's a double underlined right under the initiative priority 5, replace HVAC units. That shows at 3.125 where we currently are. So everything above that would be a reduction. Anything below that, you'd have to increase that millage cap to do. If you wanted to do everything, it would require 3.24 at the bottom. So,
Or if we use the 2.8, we could take it out of general reserves and pay for all this, right?
if these were wanted to be done as well, and we wanted to keep it at 2.8, we'd have to pull from the reserves to do these. Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. Okay.
But I thought you would do that only in capital expenses. You would only do that for capital expenses, correct?
No, we wouldn't recommend it.
We can use for anything we want. General reserves.
It's not what we're recommending. It is an option. If you
It
say,
is an
I
option.
just want the baseline at 2.8, I wanted to do all these other
I'm saying you
projects,
could
where
do
would the
that.
money come from?
Okay.
You could.
Okay, just for argument's sake, going down that line, what does that total come out to? Dollar-wise? Is it double line? If we were to use general funds?
I couldn't hear. What's your question?
What does that add up to, dollar amount?
4,508,000.
No.
No, it's about 3 million.
Up to the double line.
Up to which line?
There's a double line, which defines if we stay at the current, right? If we stay at the current millage rate, we can
Okay,
do
I
all
see.
projects up to the double line.
I see it. Okay.
So what I'm saying is, what does that
Okay, I hear. Now I understand.
amount to, and then how much does that? What percentage does that drop our reserve by? So we're at 40%. Where would you think more or less we'd get to?
I think it's about $3 million. I can't add that quickly, but
3 million.
it would take $3 million from the reserve.
From 17, which the reserve was about 17, minus 3, so we get to about 14 million. What percentage of that is the total?
14 over 40.
Yeah.
35%.
35%. Okay.
Benjamin, could you give us, given the valuation we have right now, do we have what the rollback rate would be?
Not at this time. So that will come out on July 1st.
So
Okay.
Go back to page 18. So with such a big increase of our property values, we have revenue coming in, but I also see some large increases in expenditures in each of these departments. A few of them go down, some of them stay low, but a lot of them have some big jumps.
About 10% tax increase, right?
What's that?
About 10% tax increase. Is that about?
I'm not
No,
sure.
it was 7.2.
7%,
And then-
6% actually.
And then
in
how many
revenues.
percent for this?
Oh, 7% in ad
Set
valorem.
ad valorem, another 3% here. That's 10%, 11% increase. Yes.
If we went the 3.2.
Well, I'm saying, if you want to do the whole thing, then that's what.
But my question is that we have these big jumps inside the operating, not in the capital expenses, and this on page 18, this is what we want to do, or is this just to keep what we have, but the same as what we were doing last year to this year?
This is the baseline. So this is to keep what we have, what would it cost to
So
do
we would
next
have
year.
to increase our budget by 6.2% to keep the exact same operating system that we have today to tomorrow.
Correct.
What's the big increases there? Is it our staff that has a huge increase? I think
So
we
no, so
saw,
remember in the
right?
bubble,
Staff only went up,
drivers.
2.5%.
This shows you the drivers. So that $2.3 million increase.
So professional
Most of it was
contracts.
professional
Not personnel.
Yeah, it's not personnel. So professional contractual service and just general operations and
We
maintenance.
don't know what the personnel is, because we don't know what we spent this year. You're looking at the budgeted. We don't know what the actual is.
Yeah, but I guess budget to budget. Yeah, I mean, actual is going to be different because you might have people that
But let's
and you have
say
to
for
fill them.
argument's sake, it's 5% less, and you're increasing by 2.5. You're not increasing 2.5, you're increasing 7.5.
Yeah. So to keep it the exact same as what we had last year to this year, we would have to increase our professional contract services by 11.9%, 12%, and almost 13% in just general operations outside of personnel and
Correct.
Well, that's to keep the budget at the same amount, not necessarily to keep what we're doing at the same amount.
okay, because there's a lot of things that we didn't do that had some money implications.
Or what we are doing is costing more.
Okay. So that's just where I lose in this presentation. I can't see that. Like what are we going to ask for? And I know that you go through the difference of the the different focus areas, but it's hard to tell what we're doing now and what's changing there and why versus the extra stuff we want to do, that's where I'm a little bit lost.
And some of it is inflation, and some of it is just raising prices, et cetera, but we don't really know.
Well, the public works would seem, the correlation between improved maintenance seems pretty obvious, but what about the clerk? Is this information requests?
I know the clerk's significant increase was legal mailings. We had budgeted way too low for fiscal year 24. These are, if you remember it was the, I can't remember. We have the $500,000 limit for
$500,000 capital, yeah.
Capital authorizing, and there's been more so than anticipated. The cost of that is expensive, and they've been more frequent, so we were adequately low. I know she also has some one-time election stuff that happens in November that wasn't in, it's kind of an every other year kind of thing.
We also do have some software public records requests in there as well.
Implementation of a new public records request software as well.
I don't know if Jocelyn's on, but also she explained to me that the advertising cost also really went up because the publication that not just Jocelyn but all the clerks used to advertise no longer has a paper publication, which meant they had to go to Miami Herald, which was significantly more expensive. And it sounds to me like the organization sort of clerks is working on trying to figure out an alternative, but in the interim that cost just really did balloon.
That's a good point. Not only have the legal advertising costs gone up, but there's been more frequency as we've done more procurements. We've had to advertise those as well in those publications. So we were, based on what we were actually doing, I thought we were under budgeted in 24 in her department.
But the problem that I have is that, you know, like for instance, the public works goes up 17.8% for doing basically what we're doing last year to this year. What's the increase? It's not. Hey, we have more stuff and we want to add somebody or do something. That's not what that 17.8% is. It's the baseline of last year to this year.
I mean, just using that as an example and drawing on my own anecdotal belief. Just for an example, the Art in Public Places relative debacle with the Badia plazas. Pretty significant new investment in maintenance and repair. And that's one of many examples of ratcheting up that whole program.
So you're saying that this is something that we didn't budget last year, but we had to do.
Well, yeah. Let me explain when I say when we say we're doing the same thing. I mean, it's not like exactly the same thing, but it's maintaining our buildings, maintaining our roadways. So that's what we're doing. So it's not going out and redoing our roadways. It's not out and redoing anything, but it's doing the maintenance that's required.
So you're basically what you're saying is that this is the baseline, but we are improving the maintenance. For instance,
or if we've identified, let's use for example an elevator that's gone out, or if we've identified an air conditioner that's gone out. You know, we certainly don't want to use that as something people are going to pick and choose on. That, you know, why would we ask the council to say, do you want to fix our elevator?
Does that go to capital? Isn't that capital expense not operating?
Only if we replaced it. Otherwise, it's just maintenance or repair.
Maintenance, okay. I don't know. It looks weird to go jump up to 17 from a baseline. I get that if you're like, hey, we want to hire another company or hire 2 people, or we're going to add this element and that's going to increase it by this much. Plus, we have some additional stuff. But if you're saying that, hey, the contracts that we have right now, we're going to come up for renegotiation, and we have no, it's the same thing that we're getting last time to this time, but it's going to go up, and that's why we're getting that hit.
Well,
that's something to know, right?
It's a combination of both of those.
Yeah, so for example, I think that we've come to the conclusion that we need to clean the wells every year, as maybe, 3 years ago we were doing on a rotating basis, and we were doing 25% over, 4-year period.
And that's in there.
So I think it's those kind of things that are we get requests all the time to fix potholes on Harbor, for example, because things happen. Those types of increases are just basic to operations. I don't think you're not talking about any capital being part of the increase. It's just the operation.
And certainly the 311 app probably facilitates additional expenditures.
It does.
A lot
It
more,
does.
A lot more eyes on what needs to be done.
So could we get like a bullet point
I would like to
list
see
of
that too.
each of these departments and why they're going up or down?
We
based
will,
on
and
last
you'll,
year to this year.
and you'll remember
Or
we're going
baseline,
to provide you at least 3 weeks in advance going into September, the specifics on those details. We're still refining this. But we would certainly be able to tell you what we're going to do. I think and I'm guessing right now, but between Public Works and Fire and Community Center, because obviously that's what those are our facilities, there's a significant amount of work, and there's probably 7 fairly large maintenance and repair projects in each one of those buildings.
Okay. And then is anything moving from department to department in this slide? Everything's staying in department. Finally. It's like the first budget where something's not moving.
It was your last.
Well, it took us 3 years to get where we wanted to be. We're there now.
God. It's like this one we're dropping, this one we're adding.
Wait till we turn the community center and athletics into a business center, and we'll really get you going on that one.
But this is Councilmember Moss's last, so I thought I would.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that for helpful for us in the hearing is to know what's changing from baseline to baseline, and then what we're adding in each of those departments, and it's very clear that we can understand.
Yeah, I think we're balancing the line between, in preparation for September, you'll get the full.
You'll get all that.
More than that.
Okay.
For this, we try to keep it high level. Maybe we go in with two or three drivers of a department.
What we're trying to do is get to a trim max. We're not trying to get to the exact trim number yet. So, but you will definitely have that information.
And also, these get so you guys know the process over the summer. These get refined as well, right? I'm still negotiating with our health insurance broker. Hasn't given us information. We're still reviewing contracts, negotiating. We may bring contracts to the council within the next few months to get final numbers.
Let's get to setting that whatever you guys want to set it at. It will always be misinterpreted out there, but before we lose power out here, and that I keep seeing the
lights are flickering.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one of our goals.
It's
power reliability.
I think you're doing that on purpose, aren't
yes,
you? Yeah.
With a little backup power, we might need some.
Yeah.
Quick question with the trim. Was last year 3.1245? I thought we said that we wouldn't want to go past the hundreds mark. I remember saying it drives me nuts that we go 1, 2, 4. It's just like, can we end it at the hundreds?
We did, and then we made some changes at the end, so that it got it to that.
So
we had a last minute
it's so
change.
small that we're talking about. Once we get to the thousands and the 10,000s, I think that we just need to stop it at the hundreds, and we just figure it out. We round it to whatever number it is. If tonight we want to go 3.24, let's just do 3.24 or 2.5. I can never remember the number, so someone always asks me, what was it? What did you? I'm like, I don't know. It's a bunch of numbers.
I think this is about keeping that second digit after the decimal the same as it is.
It is, because the last two are minuscule.
Yeah, they're almost nothing in money.
But I think we
so
added
it's
something for
ridiculous.
36, or we took out something for $36,000 last year, and I think that's what
did it.
Yeah.
Oh, from the amendment?
We came in
on the second.
We came in at the second
okay.
hearing with a nice round number, and then there was some last minute.
We're going to round it again. So if it's 36, we'll make it 40, so it gets to the number. We'll figure it out.
So we want to come to a decision now?
Yeah.
I'll move it at the proposed cap.
Can we round it?
Let's add one more digit.
So I want to caveat the rounding now because we're doing this prematurely. July 1st, we're going to get the actual number. So it might
change. We'll give it to you, but please give us a. I don't know if they agree with me. It just drives me nuts. I think having two numbers after the decimal is fine.
I do the same. Trying to remember the number.
If you can keep the second number the same, it doesn't really matter. Because you're right, it's nickels.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go on and on with numbers.
So we have a motion on the table.
Yeah, I'll second it. It's fine. I mean, we're able to now start refining it and bringing it down because I think it's very high and there's a lot of money coming in. I think what Councilmember London brought up is interesting, and I think we have to have that debate up there if we want to use some of our cap expense with some of the asset that we have in cash or not. So I think there's a lot of discussion still to go on. I want to make sure that people don't take this as we're making the tax this level.
Oh, they will.
They will. I know they do. But the idea is just saying we still don't know everything in here. We're just making sure we don't go higher than that, and we're going to work our way down.
And I think what you've all learned over the last 2 years with Benjamin and I working together, we always bring this in much lower than what we do on this Trim Max. That's our number. That is our commitment to you. That's our commitment to the community. Obviously, that we have to go through that refinement. We have to go through that process. But in September, this number will be significantly lower.
Yeah, just lower than the Trim Max. Our record is we've also brought it every year lower than the prior year millage rate. So we go beyond. It goes beyond that. So I want everyone at home or everyone watching to understand the record is we always bring it lower than the max, and in fact, the last 3 years we brought it lower than last year's millage rate. So that's our goal, and that's what we're going to work towards this summer.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that people understand that the idea is not to set it high and then try to make it lower. What we're really trying to do is have a strategic plan that results into a budget, and that plan is what we're hearing out there from our residents and our constituents of what they want and what we need. And at the same time, we have to look at what resources we have and the time that we have and what we actually can get done in a year. And we put that together and it'll come up with a number. And like the manager said, it's usually much below what we are putting it in, but this gives us some flexibility for them to work.
Yeah, I think the whole process of naming all the projects or initiatives is well thought out as well, and it kind of lets our residents know what we can't have if truly we want to get to the millage rate that where our goal is.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to walk away, and as I know you're all about ready to take this vote. I would like to walk away with looking at slide 32, the new initiatives, just to get your, not before we take the vote, but after
Some
we do,
feedback.
so that we get some feedback going forward over the summer, so we know
right.
what's important to the council.
Could I just, what Oscar just said, I think it's the opposite, and it's important. Because what we do is go through the process of analyzing every line item, every capital project, make decisions about what we're going to do, find ways, if we can criticize, cost estimates, make them lower plausibly. But at the end, the millage has to pay for the budget that we adopt. Yep.
Okay, what's the number again, Mr. Kaplan?
It is 3.24, and I'll just stop there because.
Okay.
No, give them the whole thing. And then we'll
3.2438.
And it was seconded by
me,
Mr. Moss. This further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
I'm gonna just jump in quick sorry.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't gonna say anything because I'm not sure I'm making sense. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning here, but I do want to just echo what others have said. I think the general feeling I've heard tonight is that people would really like to be able to deliver a budget that comes in a lot lower, but just in case anyone missed what was said before, it is really the responsible thing, in my opinion. Although I agreed with Ed a lot tonight, which was really a new feeling. He might not agree with what I'm about to say, but I think it is the responsible thing this early in the game to set the trim notice that gives us room to move around, knowing that our goal is to deliver a budget that comes in significantly lower. But just because we don't have all the facts and we cannot go above it. So for me, that's my 2 cents. And if we're roll calling, rather than have to unmute my Zoom again, I am a yes on this motion.
Allison, don't be nervous. The fact that you agreed with Ed so much tonight might be a function of the fact that it's very late there.
I don't know. I got to give Ed a lot of credit. He was really, Ed, the conversation we had earlier about players' comments, man, you really killed it today when you were making your points.
Thank you. I can't vote for this thing because it's a 10% increase in taxes. And yes, it gives us room to move down, but are we really prepared to increase taxes by 10%? And if we are, fine, this is okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not prepared tonight to have a cap which could give us, and I believe Steve will bring it down, I have no doubt about it. But it's still sending a message out that this is a 10% increase in taxes.
All of the work is ahead of us.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. It doesn't have to be a roll call.
Nope.
Okay. All
It's your call. If you want it, I'll do it.
I like it when you do it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
We got 2 nays?
2 nays.
Okay.
So for the record, it was the mayor and Councilmember London.
London, yes. All right, let's go back to the presentation. You wanted to focus on
I think slide 32, Mr. Mayor.
32.
We'd like to get the council's feedback on there.
Yeah.
So give us some guidance over the summer that we want to focus on.
Yeah, I guess the biggest concern for me is the underground utilities village-wide. Yes, something that we've been talking about, but all of a sudden it appearing here kind of drew my attention that I don't know. We haven't had a meeting on this yet since I've been here.
What page are you on, Joe?
Page 31.
We're at 32.
32.
Well, I'm at 31 because of the big ticket item.
You're back in the
Benjamin's doing a
capital
bad job switching.
Yeah.
There he goes.
Can you tell us what that is about, and whether or not we'll get there?
Yes, the 14.7 million is a ballpark estimate from our FPL contacts related to Zone 1 and a little bit of the Phase 1 utility undergrounding for the Resilient Infrastructure Program. The $300,000 is completing a little bit more of Zone 1's design for the utility undergrounding, but also commencing a second phase of the design next year. So in total, that results in 15 million. The way that 14.7 million would come online would be opening up the first bond tranche.
Right, but are you saying you would do $15 million worth of work?
No, but the bond tranche would be opened up as a package and it would be spent within 3 years. So the idea is that this money would roll forward into subsequent years, whatever isn't spent in next fiscal year. But if we wanted to be able to start work next year in construction for utility undergrounding for Phase 1, we'd need to have some capital ready. We don't know exactly how much we'd be able to get done yet, but this isn't meaning that we're taxing anyone by $14.7 million. This is more or less giving you an idea of what the first tranche would look like, which is the 17.2 million.
And Colin, why don't you give them not each step, because there are a lot of steps to doing the bond, but kind of step by step in the timeline of where we will and when we're going to bring it to the council to approve the usage of the bond.
There's a very detailed timeline our bond council gave us that I can share with you all. The expectation is we would present you might know more about this than me.
Yeah.
More detail.
For the offering statement, and just to answer why 17.2, are we actually going to do that? When you look at a tranche of a bond, there are obviously costs to issue a bond. There are legal costs, underwriting, the official statement, rating agencies as well. It'd be irresponsible to do such a small tranche for, say, hey, we're only going to do $2 million next year. As a percentage of the total issuance, you pay over 1% in fees. We don't want that. So the fact that you take it out in 1 year, you have a tight IRS guideline that says you must spend it within 3 years, which is why now is the time to do this, and then we'd spend it out. Yeah. In terms of the timeline, yes, that process is a lengthy process. When you have the rating agencies come in, we'd have a financial advisor who's going to advise us whether we go to the public markets, whether we do a negotiated or public as well. But we'll bring the official statement to the council. What month was it?
The plan was November if we were going to open it in April. It's about a 6-month process, but I think when our construction date is known more solidly, we'll start working back that 6-month process because we don't want to start the timeline on that 36-month period of performance until we're pretty close to when we're going to break ground and actually use the money. But in total, it's about 6 months. And obviously it goes to council. There's notices going to the public market versus going to a bank for a loan. They have different repayment terms. There's different interest rates with those two options too. So as Benjamin mentioned, our council will help us make the right decision, but you guys will be involved.
And what our commitment to you, Mr. Mayor and council, is we will be going through our 30% design review at the end of July, beginning of August. 60%, I believe, is somewhere around November, December. So we intend to come talk to you all on an update in October, so that you have an idea of what we're going to be moving forward on. So you'll have all the details. We will not be moving forward yet with the bond request until after that conversation. That's when we'll kick that off.
I would suggest we don't go for bonds in small increments, that basically we go ahead and borrow and use as much as we have internally and borrow as much as we can short term until we're using a big chunk of the bond. That's when I say a big chunk of the bond, because as you said, there's issuing costs. And you want to minimize that. And it's not proportional necessarily to the amount of money. In other words, a $100 million bond does not cost 5 times as much as a $20 million bond, but maybe 30% more. So you really don't want to go, in at least my experience in doing tax exempt bonds, you don't want to go with small pieces. Do it with the largest piece possible.
That's the intent, and I think once in October, when we have 60% done, we'll have much more solid cost estimates, and we'll have a better financial picture of how we want to break out the costs of Zone 1 into which types of payment mechanisms. It could be the case that the tranche grows.
Well, this is something you could use your general reserve for. Since you don't give it back, you could use general reserve for this thing and then replenish that when you actually do go with the bond. And then that is a good, valid reason to have the general reserve, to use it to minimize your bond issuing costs.
But my question was about the same. Just, are we being fully efficient on when to use and how much to use with regards to the fees, the interest, et cetera? And I'm kind of feeling what Ed is putting out there as far as using that reserve in the short term to make sure we're being most efficient on when we use that. Because in my mind, I really thought the first tranche we were going to take was going to be much later. And so I was hopeful, hopeful that interest rates will eventually go down further, and then there's a certain efficiency to that as well.
But don't you have a, especially on a GOB, don't we have a time limit of once you pull it, it's got to be spent in 3 years, right?
Correct.
So to answer everybody, first, yes, we do look at, obviously I mentioned cost of issuance, but I think you're almost advocating for reserve or what we've done is taken surplus dollars, put them against projects. That's not the first money we're spending on this project. Some of the initial planning and design was used from those exact dollars, so we didn't have to issue for such smaller. So we're doing exactly that.
I'm not telling you how to, do it. I'm just saying, in general.
You're not?
No. In general, I'm not saying do 12 or 12. I'm saying, if possible, do as large an obligation bond as possible, as late as possible, with the expectation or the hope that interest rates will come down in the meantime. But meanwhile, you have that money anyway available. That's all.
And we have.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
See, the good reason why we have a reserve.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Good reason why we have reserve.
I just said it. If you
This
want
is
to get
awesome.
reserves for that,
Yeah, we can protect ourselves
then
from
that's a
interest
good
rates.
reason.
Remember, we've already spent significantly in planning design without having to borrow, right? Because we didn't want to issue.
We've had these discussions.
Yeah, so I think we have used them responsibly to we don't want, listen, borrowing is the last resort. We know there's interest costs, there's cost of issuance as well, so we're going to push it as long as we can. These are numbers that will obviously make a significant dent in any reserves that we had. So now, I think now is the time.
The bond council is the biggest ripoff there is. It's a standard book. They do nothing. And they try and charge as much as possible.
But you have to do it.
Well, but there's all kinds of bond councils, let me tell you.
Those are our esteemed attorneys.
What? You guys don't get bond, do you?
They do
I'm
bonds.
sorry.
You can't do this without an opinion.
I thought it was some outside counsel. I don't know. That must be included. You'll see that.
What about replacing the fire rescue truck? I thought we already budgeted and that's already been moved
So
forward.
the two $600,000. Which one? Oh, the 368.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's for
Go to the next
Chief
slide. Go to the next slide. Yeah. So it gets a little bigger. We can read it better. Chief's right behind you if he wants to provide.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. So there's a couple of rescue trucks that you already passed that we bought $1.2 million worth. Each of them were $600,000. Our fleet, our rescue truck fleet, which is 3, have been pretty much in dire straits. We have the two 2012s, which you are due for replacement. Pretty much immediately after I was here in front of you, both of them had a catastrophic or a critical failure, I would say. The boxes had a crack in the patient compartment. One was so bad that it was taken out of service. It was sent back to the manufacturer. It was assessed, and there was actually a repair that was done on it by the manufacturer under warranty. It's been out of service since March. About the same time we were at this meeting, I think, if you recall, we had a tornado watch. We had a truck that, our second truck, the 2012, broke down during the tornado watch. It was not even drivable. It had to get towed back to the shop. It's been out of service since with a chassis problem. Now that truck, the chassis was repaired, and it's on its way to the manufacturer to get the box addressed. I made currently a spare rescue truck and our 2006 rescue. The environment for building truck.
City of Miami truck that I
see
see around.
It's a City of Miami truck, so you can't even tell that Key Biscayne is providing a service out here. But it's our firefighter paramedics on it. I was actually on a call today.
Get a magnet and stick it on there.
Good. So, but unfortunately, the city's fleet is in pretty bad shape as well. I've asked if we can borrow a truck for them long term. They're not in a position to commit to us for a long term, either to lease or they have their fleet's in bad shape, and so we have an opportunity to buy a demo truck for about $370,000. I recommended to the manager that we purchase that truck. I know it's not all that high on that list as far as priorities go, but it's a strong recommendation that we need to get our fleet in shape for the future. It will feed into the plan for remounting boxes. It's of the same family. It's a Braun, and the reason it's $370,000 is not built to the same spec. And if we don't do it, I think that over the next 2 years, when we expect delivery for the new trucks, we are likely to have a problem, continuing to provide a service. We're going to have to beg, borrow, do whatever we need to do, but we're really holding our fleet together with Band-Aids.
So you're saying that this 368 is like a bridge between now and when we get the 2 new trucks?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought that was a portion of the 2 new trucks. Okay. And then the other question I had was add 2 police officers to save streets, which I read in the report that it has to do with micromobility, e-bikes and things like that, which we just banned. From the very beginning, I remember when we talked about, when the council decided that, hey, let's try to enforce it, I kept telling you, we're going to get a time when our chief comes up here and says, we need to hire more people to regulate these bikes, which I was not for. I'm not for hiring more officers that chase children around on toys. Now that we ban it, I think the problem is smaller. There's probably still more enforcement, but I'm not 100% convinced that we need 2 officers for that reason.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. So let me address each position specifically. The first one, I don't think it's a secret to anyone here. Since I've been here, I've been putting out an annual report. Our calls for service have increased. The demands that our residents expect of us have increased. And it's not just in micromobility, it's with golf carts enforcement, it's on the water. And look, all it takes is something that happened earlier today to see how our resources are depleted. Last night, every officer that was working was depleted. We had no one available for calls for service. Today, same thing. I had to call in 3 officers that were off to come in and assist. We're doing the same thing tomorrow. We are a village that operates as a small city now. We have small city issues. And if you look at our crime, and 2 main things that I think need to be considered when you look at this. One is our detectives are tasked with a large caseload. I looked at their cases last week. I have 81 open cases right now between two detectives. If you look at the industry standard, that's way in excess. We have to get them help. And I hate to go back and look at the past, but we've had an example this year when we have a large case, it takes all their time and cases keep building up. The second position, I want to put in a forfeiture task force. That officer would be assigned to a federal task force. There's a cost benefit to the village for that. It wouldn't happen immediately. I'm not standing here and say if that position's approved, we're going to see it immediately. But once the revenues come back from the seizures that are made by members of those task force, and we've done some analysis early on that, those are positions that we can potentially reduce operating costs in other areas of our budget, because the way the federal task force work, when money seized, you're able to use that for things such as equipment costs, uniform costs. So my goal is in the long run to try to potentially reduce the cost there. That's why we're asking for 2 more officers. One would be utilized exclusively for the task force, and the other one would be to assist in investigations and in the issues that we have coming up throughout the community.
So from a standpoint of traffic and things like that, we're not going to see much of a difference there.
No, we are, because that's the thing. Like, everybody, traffic is the #1 issue, and I've been hitting roll calls in the last 2 weeks. I'll give you an example. There is a lot of chatter on Nextdoor about Harbor Drive. Okay, the traffic's out of control. They don't see the cops there. I'm gonna, if you give me 1 second, I want to send you what I sent to a constituent yesterday. Is residents may say that they don't see us out there, but we conducted speed studies on Harbor Drive where we're putting resources out there, and I think in a 2-month span, 112,000 vehicles traversed Harbor Drive. In that 2-month span, the 25% of those 112 vehicles were clocked at 21 miles or less. 85% of those vehicles were clocked at 26 miles or less. But because of the chatter on social media, I've had officers assigned out there the last 3 days at 6 different points, 7 hours total patrol time, running radar, nonstop the last 2 days, 0 violations.
Do the people see the police before? I mean, are they slowing down because they see the police officer there, or is he hidden and you're seeing what they're doing?
In different areas all along Harbor. I went out there yesterday for an hour myself. But these are things we're asked to do. And unfortunately, we're not in a society that I can give all these statistics and they're not taken to heart. But I have a responsibility to balance the needs of the citizens of this community and their concerns. And perception is reality. And the reality is that traffic is our #1 concern. So if the citizens that live along Harbor Drive feel like that's an issue, I'm going to assign resources there. Obviously, today I had to pull back a little bit because we had something happen. But that happens every day here. I talk to each of you. You all text me at 5:15 in the morning to 11 at night, and I answer everybody. We are dealing with city issues in a village, and we can continue to operate at the same method that we are. I want to have a motor officer on each day shift. That is the goal moving forward. But we can't do that. I want to have 2 VROs. I haven't been able to do that in 3 years here. And I love Councilmember London's ideology, but I also have life. I have 3 officers out with newborns right now. That impacts our staffing. So I want to be able to do everything for the members of these communities. I want to continue giving them the level of service that they deserve. I do think this police department provides exceptional service. I stand behind the work that we do. I'm proud of the work that we do. But if we're going to elevate and continue to do the things that we need to do, I think this is necessary.
So what I would say, for me to get into, and I don't know how you guys agree with this, but I'll just tell you from the experience a few years ago, Chuck Press came, Chief Press, he came up here and said I needed to add 2 traffic units because we're going to crack down on the traffic. And from one day to the next, I really didn't see any difference. And I don't think the people really saw any difference of what we saw. Maybe you saw it internally, but externally, we didn't really see much, and we added these 2 police officers. So if you're asking for the 2 police officers, I want it very clear what it is that we're going to see, what are those goals that we're going to achieve with them, so that we know, hey, this is what you're going to see in traffic, this is what we're going to do here, this is what we're going to do here, because I don't want to be like, yes, let's put 2 in there, and then same thing again.
Councilmember Moss, if I could just address that. I remember when I first started here almost 3 years ago, I came in when the decision was made already, but you wanted to hold off so that I could evaluate, and you asked for the same very thing when I asked at that point were those 2 officers that were added. I haven't been able to do that. We can't. You know, I have 1 VRO who's been extremely successful. Look at the annual crime report, over 1,140 events that VRO's attended, and countless children has been touched in this community. We need to realize, and I'm standing here telling you what I want to do. I want to clear criminal cases. I want to put an officer in a federalized task force, and I want to have my 2 motors out there writing tickets and doing traffic enforcement. That is what I'm standing here and telling you. I'm letting the council know what my expectations are. But I also want to be realistic here. We have issues that come up, and when they come up, it drains our resources. And we're lucky, like when our residents want to ask about relationships, I had 3 FWC votes here at 2 o'clock in the morning last night. I had a lieutenant from FWC here. I had the county. I had Broward Sheriff's Office here today. Like, we have great relationships, but that doesn't happen every day. And most of the time, we're left handling the criminal and investigative matters. The calls are coming from our local hotels, the businesses, and the concerns from our citizens.
Chief, the calls, how much have they gone up?
I don't have my report in front of me, but from one year to the other, we had I think it was a 4.5% increase from 2023 to 2024, and then prior to that, we had an increase from 2022 to 2023. So the calls are going up. The arrests went up last year. Yes, our citations did go down, but just because citations go down doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. It means that we could have more compliance. Do I think we could do more traffic enforcement? 1,000%. I just left a roll call earlier tonight preaching that on the importance of traffic, and it's the #1 concern in our survey. But if you also look at our survey from the last one to this one, we improved in every category, and the one that we didn't improve, it was neutral. So that means that we're doing something right. Can we be better? We can always be better. Are we perfect? No. But I really believe that this is necessary to continue going and giving the services that our citizens expect and demand from us.
So, I mean, just to go back, I think that I agree with what you're saying, but it's just important that maybe when Chief Press, had these 2 new officers, maybe there was an improvement, but it's just hard for us to know what it is because there's no way of understanding what are the clear strategies of why we're adding these 2 people, and then are we hitting those goals? And that's a very easy and I think very important thing that we should do year on year, because if we had 2 officers and we're not hitting those goals, maybe we didn't need those 2 officers. We would say, you know what, thank you, but we didn't need them, let's remove them. Or yes, we need them, maybe we need more. But I think it's very important that we have goals. I don't want to just be like, hey, I need 2 officers, give 2 officers, and then what? Did it work? Did it not work? We don't know.
No, we'll do that. As you know, the chief puts out his annual statistics, and what we'll do is, if this does go forward and it does get approved, we will identify very specifically the goals, and we'll establish the metrics on which we'll measure it. And then, we've got the statistics over the last year, so now we can be able to see if there's a difference in what we're achieving.
But I would rather have the goals before we approve this.
Oh no, we will.
Okay,
all right.
Right. That's just what I'm
Yeah, we'll set the goals. We'll actually set the metrics. We'll tell you what the metrics are too.
Okay.
And we'll tell you where we want to go from, and where we want to go to. And we'll use his report that he used, last year. This is the baseline where we want to go. This is where we want to be next.
Yeah, this is what I can provide with the same officers I have today. And if you add 2 more, this is what you're going to get. This is how it's going to improve.
Do understand though, and sometimes when it comes to policing, it's hard to prove a negative, right? Sometimes what they do is they do their work, and if something doesn't happen, it's hard to say whether it's because we had an officer there or we didn't have, so sometimes just having more presence stops things, right? And that's where they have a difficulty in justifying sometimes what they did.
Yeah.
In addition to what the manager said, I think it's important not only to focus on the annual report, I'll also send you, I recently compiled a study through all the police chiefs in Dade County of local municipalities, what their sworn allotment is compared to their residential population. And I think when you see that document, you're going to see that we are clearly not where we should be.
Yeah, and I think that, the annual report is a report, but it's difficult for us to understand. I think what we have to do is set, and I think you should know what our expectations are.
We'll pull out those specific ones, yes. Definitely.
Yeah, and how we're measuring up to those. I think that's what I'm looking more than just annual report, how many people called, that doesn't mean anything to me. What it is that what do we expect? Are we meeting those goals?
And with all due respect, I know it doesn't mean something to you, but I can't tell you how many residents call me and ask me the questions about the information that's in that very report. And there's a lot of work that goes into that report, and before, all I would hear is, there's no transparency, we don't know what you're doing, we don't know what the statistics are. Well, we put it in there now, and we added more statistics this year on purpose. It's not just so people can look at numbers and say, hey, all those numbers in the annual report aren't favorable to the police department, because they're not.
Yeah.
I looked at it when we prepared it. But a lot of them are favorable, and a lot of it includes the information that was asked by the residents.
Okay.
If you're speaking to the same thing I'm remembering with respect to Chief Press, just a point of recollection, this was about putting 2 cops out on the causeway primarily because there was a lot of bike-car conflict. So they weren't in the village, they were really on the causeway primarily, in Crandon, basically. And the report back was pretty subjective, but it included less conflict, less tension, a safer, better, more comfortable condition. So, you know, is that statistical, empirical enough? But that's what I recall.
Yeah, remember,
That is a hard thing to measure.
We improved 3 more police officers to patrol the causeway because Dade County wasn't doing a good job. We signed an interlocal agreement with them. We bought motorcycles, so they would do that. And we had 2 motorcycles, the causeway. And then we realized after a while, we weren't doing that. We still kept the officers, kept the motorcycles, but we then had 2. Now, do you remember that? That's what you're talking about. Then he tried the traffic force. That was the next 3 people you're talking about. He wanted to have a specific traffic patrol for the 3 officers. I think that's what you're talking about. So the total was 6 new officers, 3 for the causeway, which he then said he needed anyway, and then 3 more for the traffic.
That second part I don't.
So, and that's what it came to.
But
So that's when we got the 6 officers, 3 of them which were saying we don't do the causeway, like they were supposed to be specifically just for the causeway. Anyway, so that's what we're talking about. I think measurable events, what you're talking about. This is what we expected to see. That's what we agreed to, and then nothing happened. I also agree that 100%, you know, it's not like making widgets, you know. Maybe more officers has less crime, but it's not a direct relationship between officers and crime. But certainly don't with anybody, and certainly don't have one person for every officer. So there's some happy medium in between.
And I gotta say, the county's doing a great job on the causeway right now because they're pulling people over. I go
They're
through there at least twice a day, and I see people getting pulled over almost every single time I'm driving.
It
through
almost feels punitive at a 40-mile-an-hour speed
It
limit.
is.
Go 40, definitely go 40.
To not take, I don't want to get on the weeds on this. I don't remember the additional 3, but I think 2 things happened. One, the condition improved, and the second was the county put that green bike lane in, which really caused an improvement. So the relevance of those 2 officers on motorcycles in Crandon presumably became reduced.
Then we took that off a long time ago. Basically, they started patrolling the causeway, so we stopped patrolling the causeway.
Well, I know that you have decisions to make. If anybody on the council has questions or concerns, as you know, my door is always open. I'm here available to answer any questions that you may have, and any concerns that you may have.
Thank you.
Okay, you got anything else?
Yeah, the third one is just add fire captain, emergency manager. I just wanted to understand that one a little bit more too.
Okay.
Those are the only 3 that popped
Good
up.
stuff.
So the addition of the fire captain and emergency manager, back in May of last year, the CPSM, which was Joe Pozo, he came and he presented to you, he had a consultant's report. Part of it was some restructuring in the fire department. As you know, our deputy chief of operations, Mike Herring, he retired in April. And Joe Fernandez came on, and as part of the succession, and that's laid out in that report, includes May 25 exit for myself and September 2025 exit for the fire marshal. And so, as part of the succession plan, to bring on a captain that can play an emergency management role, provide EMS training and fire training, along with some compliance, is, in my recommendation, a really, truly critical component of keeping the success of the fire department.
So is this a transition that we're hiring this person now, and then we'll have a marshal and a captain falling off, and this person staying?
No, I think that. Look, I'm not gonna predict the future. I don't know what the performance of the fire department will be. I don't know what your expectation will be. I think I understand this community, and there's a very high expectation of the level of fire service that's needed. We demand a lot from our personnel, and I will tell you, we on staff, and I think you just heard from the police chief and all of our staff, including the fire department, we're like a 24/7 operation. It could be in the middle of the night. It could be, and one day I'm talking to the plumber, and the next day I'm talking to FDOT, the same day I'm talking to FDOT. And there's not enough. The firefighters show up to work for 24 hours and they go home. But your staff is very small, and I I think it's a critical component that is needed. And emergency management, we've gotten by with a lot of institutional knowledge, and and you've lost a lot of institutional knowledge. It's going to take more work to get the same amount of, or it's going to take more effort to get the same amount of work done.
So Eric, this is an addition. This is a new position.
A new position.
In the fire department. We're not replacing somebody or adding. It's a transition. It's a new position.
It's a new position, and if I could point out, and I also recognize as far as the priorities, this is low, but I'd like to point out that we planned last year, and you funded, and I appreciate it, and I think it's working. We're executing a great plan, and so we're down almost $500,000 in the fire department, and so I am asking for some things, but I'm not asking for them to build this fiefdom. I'm asking for them for sustainability of the fire department, because this community is accustomed to service, and I know it's demanded of them, and this is what this department, this is what this community needs in order to sustain the service level that you come to expect.
So you're saying if we don't hire this position, our service level will drop, or this will add additional service to what we already have?
No, I'm trying to, what we're trying to do in a lot of these things is we're trying to allow you to coast through this transition, if you will, and I don't mean coast as in like it's easy, but to not impact your service level, and sometimes you need to put people to.
But that's a temporary thing. This transition. Once we get past the transition, is this adding?
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that.
Are you leaving?
Am I leaving?
Yeah.
If you offer me a job, I'm not going to negotiate whether I'm, like an offer.
You're going to stay here. If you're staying here, what do we need this guy for?
Well, here, look. The reality is, and the manager and I have spoke about it. I have nothing in front of me other than a conversation that you've had, and about 1,000 people in this community have asked me the same question: are you leaving? You're retiring?
Yeah.
But I can't sit here and negotiate a contract from the dais publicly with you. If the manager wants to come to me and talk to me about that, I'm open to it, and I remain open to it.
Fine.
But
I think Ed's.
But in fairness,
you're open to staying.
But in fairness, him and I have had a conversation during this budget process, and he said it's something we have to discuss over the summer, which has to do with the fire chief's position.
Yeah.
And so and to be blunt, my head in trying to prepare this fire department is beyond 12 months from now.
You're assuming you're leaving.
I'm acting as if I'm leaving, yes,
Okay, that's amazing.
because I think that's a responsible thing to do.
But Ed, your question is that if you weren't leaving, would this position be needed or not?
Yeah, the amount of work, if you start to break down the components of what's needed to be done to maintain the fire department, we don't have enough people to do what needs to be done. And so, emergency management is when you think about sustainability, you've been talking about floods, you've been talking about hurricanes. It's a huge function. And in fairness, you can see, I think, in this budget, there's an exercise that we're talking about spending $150,000 on. That's a big deal. And so emergency management is a significant component, and this position is only going to give a small full-time equivalent to that. And so
what I would suggest is the same as talking to Chief, is that if we're adding a position, we got to know what it is that either we're filling a hole or we're getting additional service, whatever it is, so we can understand what the cost benefit is and make that decision whether we feel strongly about it. But I think there needs to be a little bit of that convincing of this is why we need this.
So Chief, I mean, I think you and I spoke about this position, and my understanding there's three components of it. It's firefighter training, it's EMS standards, and it's emergency management.
Yes.
And so I'll kind of do the intro and you go in the details. So obviously with a much younger group of firefighters, that training is critical. We need to bring them up to a level that we've had for many years that we've lost over time. Secondly, our biggest calls for service are EMS. That's really where we make our money in this community. And to ensure not only just have the standards of training, but we also have the equipment in place, this person will also ensure we do that. And then thirdly, we've gone for a long time without having a designated emergency manager in this community. And we need someone who can make sure that we hold the standards and the plans to be able to do that. So those are 3 things that I believe you told me that you want. And if you want to add anything to that, please do.
I'll just say, we brought on Joe Fernandez, who's the Deputy Chief Operations. He comes with a plethora of emergency management knowledge, but he has, if you break down the budget, what he's responsible for in concept, he's responsible for 85% of the personnel. Not quite, probably a little less because there's a few others that are on staff, but he's responsible for so much that goes out that door. And one person can't do everything. Captain Feeney's leaving in 2027. He's currently our EMS captain. There's a lot of work to do to maintain the level of service that you have in this community. And I'm going to flat out tell you, if you don't invest in what you have created, right? I know how much passion has been put into creating the fire department and all the other services. You're not going to be able to maintain.
Okay, so I want to meet with you more on this. I agree. This is very, very important to maintain that, and I just want to make sure it's very clear on, what we're trying to achieve and why we're trying to do it. To me, I think this is. I don't know if everybody else agrees, but I always feel that the fire department is a really well-run department. I mean, it moves very precisely, and you guys are very good at running the department. But when you add a new position, I think it's just. We need to be able to go back to the constituents and say, we're trying to either maintain this, this, and this, and add this, this, and this, so people understand and we understand why this is so important. And whenever you bring it back for the hearing, it would be good to have kind of those bullet points, like, hey, this is why we're doing this, and I think that helps solidify it more.
Can I just add 2 things? I wholeheartedly agree with you about the fire department. So. But it's a credit to the men and women and the work and the passion that they give to this community. But the May 9th report that was here, I believe it was a year ago, it's all spelled out in that report. So it's not like we're starting from a blank slate and we're making this up. And that was Joe Pozo and his team worked with the manager, myself. He did a full-on analysis. So, but we'll be happy to come back to you.
Yeah, I think we just got to boil it down to something very simple. Like these are the pieces, so people can really understand it.
We can do that.
The reports are a lot, so it'll be helpful. But I'll meet with you also between here and then and go through it.
Okay. You guys can stay here all night if you want, but I'm in a golf cart and it's wet out there, so I'm getting ready to go.
You're going to drive in that? It's like a monsoon out there.
I'm going out there in that monsoon. Couple really important things. Mr. Manager, when will we absolutely drop dead have the budget?
When you say have the budget, what do you mean?
Have a budget to look at in August.
My goal is no later than August 30th, but I will get it to you before that. And as we get closer, I'll let you know. So this is so you would have.
Because we always have this issue, and
let me be clear. When you're talking about the line item budgets, what you're talking about?
Right, a final.
So my goal is August 30th, but my intention is to get it much earlier than that.
Right, and this is a very good start. What we have here, it's a good start, and please, everyone, start talking to staff now, okay? So it's not, at the last second, the day before the first budget hearing to have these conversations. Brett's made some great points tonight. So please work on that.
I'd like to back up just a couple of things. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, for interrupting, but 2 things will happen before that as well. So in the latter part of July, once we get in the actual number on July 1st, we have an opportunity to look and identify additional revenues, make some adjustments based on your guidance right now. We will release it to the public on the website in the latter part of July.
Okay, so
everybody will have a copy of it.
But I'm glad you brought that up. Can you put this on the website?
This will be on tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I don't know why it can't be on there.
It'll be on tomorrow. I just wanted to give the council the first shot to give us feedback, and now that we have the feedback and it's been presented in front of the public, we'll definitely put it on the website. Okay. And one other thing I wanted to add is, I know I mentioned earlier, in fact it's right up there right now, August 14th we will hold a community budget meeting so that we can get their feedback, number 1, and then number 2, guys will be able to walk through that budget process so they understand the step-by-step process we get to a budget recommendation in September.
Okay, that's very good. To have a kind of like a workshop for the public and have them ask you all the questions that they want to ask. Okay. Anything else?
What about capital improvements? We're not going to look at that really quick. I mean, I just have a couple questions in it.
Sure. I thought you had.
Oh no, I was looking at the proposed ones for the next.
All the new ones. Oh, you
yeah, the final slides in capital improvements. The capital improvement plan.
The subsequent years. Yeah.
The subsequent years. So a couple of things in here. We have improved.
I
Beach
fainted
Park.
when I saw that one.
You what? Your eyes just fainted. So improved Beach Park Phase 2. We got $3 million. Then we got $1.5 million. Then we got $2.2 million. And how much are we spending on this project? I thought this project was supposed to be $1.2 million total, and that was it. And we have like $6-7 million here in capital improvements. So I'm a little bit confused by that one.
So improved Beach Park Phase 2 in fiscal year 26 is related to the restrooms and the splash pad infrastructure. The next Phase 3 is 27, which would be the playground and the green space. There is mention of the Beach Park Plaza, the exterior plaza, and the linear park on East Enid as separate projects. Those would actually be available for grant funding because they're not excluding the public. But I don't think there's.
What was the original budget that we had on this project?
We originally had estimated about $2 million, but as we've seen with the first phase, construction costs are wildly higher than we thought, and especially the general requirements are a bigger portion of the cost than we had thought. And as we break it up, we end up paying those general requirements again and again. So this is just a rough estimate. We're not held to this, and it's really at the discretion of council if you want to proceed with the subsequent phases that quickly, or if you are satisfied with how phase 1 goes, and we can just hold off and hold the design for later years.
So again, I always go back to this project. I really don't remember this becoming this high priority to redesign the beach park. I remember that we talked about the stuff falling apart, and we talked about the pavilion being designed in a bad way that we could redesign it, and then this thing grew, and now it's growing, and now I'm looking at this, and now we're into a over $6 million project for this park, and this is, I mean, it just needs a little bit tender, loving care, and it's still a beautiful park. We got to look at this because I think we're going way too out there, and we have really important things to focus on, and I think we got to look at that a little closer.
We started with the gate, which is not very attractive, and the pavilion.
Yeah,
and Councilmember, we'll do that.
Okay.
We spent most of our time and effort coming up to this meeting on this year's capital improvement plan.
Not as much on these ones.
Yeah. So yeah, we that's something we'll definitely scrub and take a look at.
Okay. Fleet replacement plan. Can you guys send us that so we know when we're changing, kind of what in all our departments? I'm guessing you guys have a plan, right? That says like these ones I need to change this year, next year, and it kind of gives it out because it's in here a bit. I saw that our fire quint is going to be replaced in 2028. Is it already 10 years, 7 years? What is that?
I think the idea was there's a 2-year lead time on the production.
So we have to pay for it ahead of time. So in 2030, we have the new ones. Is that every 10 years that we replace those trucks? Because I feel like we just replace it. In my head, I'm like, I feel like we just bought a brand new one. 2 new ones.
Hey, you've been here 8 years, right?
I know. I feel like I remember going there like, hey, we got something new.
What we did is we took the policy that was adopted, I think it was 2019, and we just took the numbers right out of that. I believe it was 10 years for the engine and 12 years for the ladder trucks, 7 years for the rescue trucks, and we just and everything was based on. I think there was some mileage on there. There was some. But we just took that and
every 10 years is a quince, right?
And I worked with Colleen on capital just to have a projection.
So we replaced it in 2018 is when we did
so
it? I just don't remember.
2018 was the ladder truck. And so 2030, and we had exactly what she said. We had a 2-year lead time is what we're projecting. So.
Okay.
And so, and that's really the intent of a capital program. You program it out based on your policy. I think we've shown historically we haven't necessarily followed our policy.
Right.
So if you're not identifying it, at the right time, obviously it's always going to be a resource decision. It's always going to be a priority decision at the time. But in a capital program, we want to make sure that we're identifying it in the out years so that we know when we got to lay out those investments.
Okay. When are we getting Black and Beach's report? That it was going to take 6 months to do. Do we have that ready?
I'm working on it with them.
Okay, because
I have a draft on my desk.
Yeah, because I see that also out in the years we have 1.1, 1.2, 1 million. So we're spending almost $1 million on this program management, which seems extremely high. I didn't know if that's what was going on with Black and Beach. I'm guessing that's Black and Beach there, but it seems a very high cost. And I saw a lot of the costs of our resiliency. I'm still worried about how much money we have there, just based on our projections from 2026. And I'm not saying that we have to do these projects, but we have to look at the amount. But just projected out to fiscal year 30, when you put in power lines, underground water, beaches, and your offshore, what's it called? The offshore submerged barriers. We're looking, and this is 26 and out, not including this year coming up and the years before. We're still looking at $700 million in here. I mean, these are some extremely high figures. I know that you're saying that you still need to work on this stuff, but we need to start really looking at our projections going out very clearly. Maybe when we get the Black and Beach study, it will be a little bit clearer about how much this stuff is going to cost. But again, we embarked on the big project for phase 1. It still makes me worried of how we're going to make all this work.
Let's finish phase 1 before we embark on a whole lot more.
Yeah, but it's out there. It looks like it's coming in. And then when you look at the future years projects, I mean, some of these numbers are insane. Like $15 million for a roof, $25 million for expanded communities. I don't know. Some of these numbers are just like huge. I don't know if they're future
Right, they are.
cost
They're expected to be basically $20, $30 or later.
Yeah, but $15 million roof, I've not heard of that.
For the community center?
You think that costs $15 million to re-roof it?
In 2030?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so.
15.
I mean, you can build a whole building for $15 million to re-roof it. It's not costing $15 million. Maybe $3 million at most or something in 2030. But I don't know. It just looks very high. So we have to look at some of those numbers because they're scary when you start going out looking at them. And we should have a good capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. And we should look at those numbers, kind of what we think we can spend. And we have to look at what resources we actually have in order to get that much done in that year. And if we can't, we got to shift it to the next year and spread them out. So I just looked through that. Those are just some of my comments in the capital improvement plan.
Well, those are good comments. And what you see is we're moving more and more into the future year project list because we're realizing that it's probably not going to be able to do over the next 5 years, but we'll look into more detail over the next couple months.
Yeah, it looks very ambitious, I would say, looking at it.
We are a very ambitious crew.
So, all right.
I'm good. We're good. Any other questions?
Is it still raining out there?
Say what?
Am I going to be able to make it to my car?
You want to ride home? We can't speak about anything, but I'll give you a ride if you want.
Should find something to speak
You might just get as wet to go to your car as you would to walk all the way home.
Yeah, if we could
Stay
have
home.
valet bring it up, it'd be great.
That's included in that fiscal 30.
Motion to adjourn.
He's just walking away.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No.